Mabel, you want me to be a sock puppet forever?
I'm sorry. It looks funny when you're mad.
Sock Opera remains one of my favorite episodes of Gravity Falls to this day, as it offers a little bit of everything that makes the series so great. Dipper and Mabel's sibling dynamic being put to the test against individual self-interest, but they work through it by the end as Mabel sacrifices another chance at romance. There's a few really solid gags, especially one-liners from Stan, who despite not playing a large part in the episode, still manages to have his presence felt throughout. We have an interesting plot hook and advancement with the mysterious laptop that the gang previously recovered in the bunker. Although it's destroyed by the man of the hour, the strongest factor to why this episode is so great, Bill Cipher, who strikes an infamous deal with Dipper, offering to help out with the secrets of the laptop in exchange for a puppet, only to hijack Dipper's body and destroy the computer. Despite this, Bill wasn't exactly lying to Dipper, as destroying the laptop in this episode allowed for the twins to spot the McGucket Labs insignia later on in Society of the Blind Eye, a discovery that went a very long way. However, this also implies that Bill expected to be defeated in sock opera, which is unlike the chaotic Dorito we've come to know. And when you notice that, you can't help but to wonder, what was Bill's original plan? What was he going to do if Mabel didn't get the upper hand on him? Well, we've talked about Bill's Cipher plans before, but I did a huge disservice in not mentioning this one, as I find it to be a very dark tidbit of Gravity Falls lore that probably deserves to be discussed more often. Mainly because I know people love edgy moments, and I haven't seen it discussed all too often in the years Journal 3 has been out, which saddens a fellow edgelord like me. That being said, I will issue a potential content warning, as Bill's thought process goes to a dark place. With all that said, let's jump right into it. So, what's so dark about what I'm getting at? Well, Journal 3 gives us a direct perspective on how either Dipper or Mabel encountered their adventures for practically every episode in the series, documenting their thoughts in the journal. For sock opera, Mabel takes over, recounting her experience, and includes a note from Bill Cipher that details what he planned to do after obtaining the journal from Mabel's play, both of which give insight on the body and spirit of someone who's unfortunate enough to be possessed by Cipher. The pages read, "Whoa, Dipper and I just got back from this big fight with everyone's least favorite triangle, Bill Cipher. Dipper is upstairs collapsed from exhaustion. I'll write this entry for him. An entry about a monster I call Bipper, Bill's mind, and Dipper's body. To most people, he looked just like my brother. Even I was tricked at first. And I'm normally like, so perceptive. But there's a few tips to tell the difference. 1. Eyes. Look at him sideways and you can see a quick flash of scary cat eyes, and not from the kind of cat you want to pet. This establishes that the Bill Cipher eyes are really not that easy to detect at first glance. It may be visually distinct to the audience, but to the characters, they really have to take an up-close and personal look, which makes me believe that otherwise, those possessed may just appear with normal pupils. Mabel's method is looking at them sideways, but we know a flashlight may also do the trick, as seen by Stanford's interrogation towards his brother in A Tale of Two Stans. Number 2. Hands. Chillingly cold. Is Dipper technically dead while being possessed? Number 3. Smile. Unlike Dipper, he actually smiles, but he smiles constantly and way too hard. I'd never seen Dipper's gums before this, and I never want to again. Number 4. Personality. Insane. Jams forks into his arms, throws his body down the stairs, blinks one eye at a time. But he is way more confident with girls. So, you know, pluses and minuses. And number 5, style. Gotta give the guy props on this one. He wears this suit like a pro. Better posture than Dipper too. However, creepiest of all, when Stan was driving us back home, I found this handwritten note on the floor in the car, which reads,
"Note to self. Possessing people is hilarious. To think of all the sensations I've been missing out on. Burning, stabbing, drowning. It's like a buffet tray of fun. Once I destroy that journal, I'll be giving this body its grand finale by throwing it off the water tower. Best of all, people will just think Pine Tree lost his mind, and his mental form will wander in the mindscape forever. Wanna join him, Shooting Star?"
I totally ignored Dipper's warnings. I took his journal without asking, and worst of all, I was so obsessed with my play that I didn't even notice Dipper was possessed. And I, of all people, should know, I possessed Dipper's body once too. Hope I never see that swap carpet again. Dipper, whenever you read this, I want you to know I'm sorry. And for next week, I owe you ice cream sandwiches on me. Love, Mabel. I really enjoy that they included this in, as a lot of Gravity Falls fans who watched the series as it was airing probably remember that a lot of people were constantly unhappy with Mabel. Citing sock opera as an example, although I always argued that her sacrifice spoke the loudest of any of her actions in this episode. But alas, clearly Hirsch and the team involved with this book were aware of the backlash towards Mabel and did their best so that an audience that can hold anything against her can finally make amends. Which is also why we get apologetic Mabel in the second Lost Legends story, which you can learn more about in our video, What Happened After Gravity Falls. As for the little lore bits, we know from Bipper sweating, panting, and fainting that a host of Cipher isn't technically dead, but I do believe that Bill's possession could result in a change in circulation or something to that effect as a result of the Dream Demon adjusting to the humanoid form. I mean, look at Bill. He's literally a triangle with arms and legs that are typically limp unless he needs them for gesture or dramatic effect. Not to mention, any spirit inhabiting your body could result in chills or goosebumps. But because Bill is in control, we don't actually witness that reaction. Or maybe, yeah, Dipper's body was dead to an extent. I'm just spitballing ideas here. It makes sense to at least me that Bill was only using the parts of Dipper's body that he needed, and we saw the damage that Bill was bringing upon Dipper's body, but Bill himself was unfazed. So yeah, unless we ever get any elaboration, I can't say that Dipper's body was firmly dead. As for the Mindscape, I do wish this was explored a bit more in the series, but going off Mabel's speculation on Dipper technically being dead when possessed by Bill, I'm compelled to question if Dipper would have been trapped in the Mindscape because his body would be dead by all accounts, or because jumping off the water tower would clearly result in some intense bodily damage. And if Dipper did try to reclaim his body by that point, it wouldn't be in one piece, and unable to function properly for him to survive anyways. I do wonder how many other people Bill could have done this to, booting people out of their body, getting what he wants, and then killing their physical form, so they're stranded in another plane of existence for as long as they live. Could you imagine that being like a scene in sock opera? Dipper seeing a bunch of ghosts in the Mindscape, all begging for their bodies back. Again, I'm a bit edgy. Ultimately, here's a question I want to pass off to you. If they included this plot point in the episode in some way, just as an added stake of, hey, if you lose, Bill's throwing you off the water tower, would the episode have been better or worse for it? I personally prefer the episode we got, as including this moment in the show at that moment would have kind of ruined the mystery of Bill in relation to the twins a bit, as when the episode initially premiered, we still didn't know if Bill needed Dipper and Mabel for his plans. It's a chilling revelation that works after watching the entirety of the series.
Just as every great story has a mystery, every story has an end, and Gravity Falls is no exception. The Weirdmageddon trilogy was absolutely bone-chilling, some of the best 90-ish minutes of animation I've consumed to this day. Yet when Bill Cipher is defeated and Dipper and Mabel prepare to go home, you can't help but wonder, but what else happens? Well, dear viewer, it's been about 3 years since Gravity Falls came to a close, yet not everyone is on the up and up for what happened after the Oddpocalypse. That's where we got you covered. I'm your host, Retro Nemo, and we're giving you the rundown on all the missing pieces of what happened after Weirdmageddon, today on Tuned In. Alright, so before we jump right into the nitty-gritty, let me jog your memory on how Gravity Falls came to a close in the first place. You may recall that Ford Pines, the author of the journals, informed Dipper that the containment unit he created for the interdimensional rift is beginning to crack. This rift is the only thing standing in the way between Bill Cipher and planetary conquest, a disastrous event that would bring the end of the world. Ford and Dipper embark on a journey for an adhesive to fix the rift found inside of a UFO hidden in Gravity Falls. Yes, aliens! While this is happening, Mabel is scrambling to prepare for her and Dipper's 13th birthday, excited to take this step into teenagehood. Unfortunately, reality smacks Mabel in the face as she begins to discover the horrors that come with growing up. To make matters worse, she catches wind that Ford is offering Dipper the chance to stay in Gravity Falls as his apprentice. Mabel confronts Dipper, who tries to explain that things change when you grow up, causing Mabel to storm out of the shack, grabbing Dipper's backpack, and by proxy, the rift by accident. A suspicious Blandon Blandon approaches Mabel, offering her an eternal summer, so long as Mabel hands him the rift. She does so, stupidly. Blandon destroys the rift, and surprise, surprise, it's Bill Cipher possessing Blandon. Weirdmageddon is unleashed. Mabel is imprisoned in a bubble, Ford is held captive after being turned into a gold statue, and all of Journal 3 is destroyed. Oh yeah, and Bill destroys Time Baby. Desperate, Dipper seeks out for help only to find Wendy and eventually Soos throwing down with Gideon along the way. Dipper manages to persuade Gideon to the right side and gets the key to liberate Mabel, entering the bubble only to discover his sister's been in a utopian paradise and now refuses to leave. Elsewhere, Bill discovers his apocalypse is confined to the town due to what's referred to as the natural law of weirdness magnetism, awakening Ford and demanding to get the equation to eliminate the barrier, though Ford is of course very much resistant to the proposal. Dipper almost succumbs alongside Wendy and Soos, but remains level-headed enough to eventually bring Mabel back to her senses after a quick reminiscence about the good times they've had. With the gang back together, they head towards the Mystery Shack and reunite with Grunkle Stan. Oh, and a lot of side characters, both human and supernatural, are here too. They all build a giant Shacktron and head down towards Bill Cipher's Pyramid to rescue Ford. The Shacktron kicks major butt and even keeps Bill occupied as everyone arguably important infiltrates the pyramid, frees Ford and the rest of the town. Ford pulls out his trump card to defeat Bill, a Zodiac that will vanquish Cipher and end the apocalypse. Or as we like to call it, this was at the end of the theme song for 4 years, better be something good, bro. The Zodiac works until it fails, thanks to Stan and Ford's bickering. Dipper and Mabel scramble to defeat Bill, yet it's no use. It looks like they've lost something for good, until Ford surrenders up his mind and shakes Bill's hand. Except not really, it was Stan the whole time. Bill got her pranked. Ford uses the memory gun to wipe Stan's mind clean of everything, including Bill, destroying Cipher from existence. Weirdmageddon is undone and the town slowly returns back to normal, except for Stan, whose memory struggles to recover. But you guys know what happens from here. Stan gets his memory back, Soos takes over the Mystery Shack, Dipper and Mabel go home. Wait, there's more? Yes, there is! Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls, only had so much time to wrap up the show itself. It's a shame, you could tell they wanted to do a lot more, but there's actually a lot more story for what happens before Dipper and Mabel set foot on the bus. There's even a little nugget of what happens when Dipper and Mabel return home. This information is scattered throughout various media, from books to scrapped scenes. Unfortunately, the former of those cost money, but that's where we got you covered. All of the missing pieces uncovered. Let's actually focus on Stan's memories for a little bit more. In the finale, it was portrayed as if everything came back to Stan the second Waddles jumped onto his face, when the truth is a little bit more emotional. As elaborated on Journal 3, available in your local bookstore, the effects of the memory gun can be unraveled by exposure to important images and people from one's past. Stan recovered faster than someone like McGucket due to the erasure being fresh, and everyone trying to jog his memory less than an hour after initial contact. Yet it still took about a week of what Dipper calls intensive scrapbook therapy to restore Stan back to himself. This is on top of feeding him his favorite foods, telling his life story, playing songs from when he was in high school, and driving him throughout town to revisit every spot he's ever been to. According to Dipper, Ford's the one who worked the hardest on restoring Stan's memory, being the only time anyone has ever seen Ford cry, which, if that doesn't pull at your heartstrings, nothing will. Many nights found Ford asleep on the couch next to Stan after describing their childhood, Ford profusely apologizing for the mistakes he made along the way. Ford even pulled out an old film reel of their youth, snippets of them playing on the beach, banter at the dinner table, goofing off in the pawn shop, and even them hunting down the Jersey Devil. Hey, come to think of it, that's actually a full-fledged tale that exists in Lost Legends. Let us know if you want us to storytime that in the comments below. Maybe even subscribe along the way. Beyond Stan's memories is a lingering question you may be wondering about Ford's journals. A staple of the series that's a character in its own right. While you may not be surprised to learn that the journals were also restored in the aftermath of Weirdmageddon, not just how they were prior to Bill setting them on fire either, they were practically as good as new, with previous missing pages that were either ripped out or burned returning to all 3 entries. However, Dipper decided he didn't want to hold on to these journals forever. He felt as if he was following a guide to someone else's journey. It was time for him to experience a journey of his own. Thus, he started his own journal, complete with a pine tree instead of a 6-fingered hand. Something to chronicle his own adventures. But the thing is, he didn't make the journal. It was a gift from Mabel, which was given to her by Mabel from another dimension. Oh yeah, did we forget to talk about that? Wouldn't be Gravity Falls if all the weirdness came to a close after Weirdmageddon. We were due for some after weirdness. You see, Gravity Falls wasn't the same. A giant fault line opened up in the forest, which Dipper dubbed Mabel's fault for obvious reasons. Alongside phone reception glitching out across the town and dimensional rips sprouting all across Gravity Falls, Ford, Stan, Dipper, and Mabel decide to have some special family bonding, patching the interdimensional rifts with alien adhesive. Mabel brings Waddles on this trip despite Dipper's concern, and the adorable little pig darts for one of the dimensional rips, not knowing any better. Mabel retrieves Waddles but ends up being dragged into the multiverse by a Lovecraftian 7-fingered giant hand. Mabel's descent lands her in a dimension MAB3L, or Mabel, if you didn't catch it. A dimension full of lost Mabels who have all shared a similar fate, drawn together due to the nature of them being similar beings. Talking Explainable, Sweater Mabel, who's a talking sweater, Tall Mabel, Fire Mabel, Emo Mabel, Zen Mabel, Cowboy Mabel, Dino Mabel, Morty Mabel, Stanbel, Table Mabel, Bob Ross Mabel, Molecularly Unstable Mabel, Lightbulb Mabel, you get the idea. A whole whole entire blind bag of Mabels. As Mabel begins to plot for a way home, Stan and Ford enter the multiverse in search of their grandniece, Ford using a distress beacon that summons an interdimensional kind Samaritan to give them a lift, at Ford's expense of being handcuffed in the back seat due to his status as a multi-dimensional criminal. Luckily for Mabel, in the meantime, she encounters a fellow normal Mabel who looks and behaves just like her. They manage to get a flare gun off a military expert Mabel, which alerts Stan and Ford on Mabel's location. Fortunately, things go awry for Mabel thereafter. She gets locked up in the bathroom by the other normal Mabel, who's really the most evil Mabel in the multiverse. So going forward, we'll just label her as Evil Mabel. Simple stuff. Evil Mabel masquerades as our proper Mabel and heads back with Stan and Ford, while our Mabel attempts to rally up troops to undo the predicament she found herself in, only to realize the other Mabels won't listen as they all share Mabel's fatal flaw. They're self-centered. This causes Mabel to give a speech that inspires all the Mabels to help her return home, grappling hook in hand. Ford notices there's something off with the Mabel they picked up, between her expansive vocabulary and cold demeanor, but Stan insists he knows his own niece. Ford tries to nip the situation in the bud before it escalates, yet he's outwitted by Evil Mabel. The two begin to bicker in their final moments until all the other Mabels put an end to the madness for one huge epic battle. Evil Mabel briefly has Mabel and the family as a whole on the ropes, until her sweater is removed, revealing her true identity as the cat-hating evildoer she truly is, ejecting her back into the multiverse. The other Mabels use the intergalactic vehicle as our Mabel returns to her own dimension with Stan and Ford. Reunited with Dipper, Mabel realizes how much of a handful she must have been over the summer. Better understanding her involvement in Weirdmageddon, Mabel apologizes for her constant string of selfishness throughout the summer. Icing on the cake, Mabel hands Dipper a gift from Mabel, a combination of Mabel and Dipper, a book with a gold pine tree on it, Dipper's very own journal for his very own adventures. As the Pines twins inch closer and closer to the end of their summer, they weren't the only ones who tied up loose ends with their relationship. Cue Ford and Fiddleford, former college roommates turned former scientific partners turned former strangers turned friends. Moments before forming the Zodiac in the final showdown against Bill, McGunkin and Ford had a brief reconciliation, but Ford felt as this wasn't enough and decided to pay his dear friend a visit. Ford was prepared for the worst in terms of McGunkin's mental state, but felt deeply responsible for the pain he caused once he saw McGunkin's living situation, all cooped up in a dump. Nevertheless, they chatted for hours, discussing Ford's adventures, which in return revealed a significant amount of McGunkin's intelligence had truly recovered. As a way to make things up to McGunkin, Ford insisted that Fiddleford submit his various blueprints of technological advances to the government, pursue a career as the inventor he truly is, giving him royalties that can get him beyond back on his feet and significantly upgrade his home, like, say, moving into the former Northwest family mansion. That's how it happened. Ford also encouraged McGunkin
Old man McGucket!
to reconnect with his family, which also worked out for him in the end, highlighting that sometimes second chances are worth a shot. Speaking of second chances, Ford vowed to spend the rest of his days reconciling with Stan. Ford realized that who he thought was the most selfish man in the world was the one who ended up saving the world. Although schemes, scams, and swindles weren't solely for Stan's own benefit in the long run. Stan is a hero and Ford is just a hero's brother. Ford was someone who believed being a great man meant being alone. He was caught up in the idea of being a lone hero in his own story. He felt as if he had believed in the Zodiac sooner, maybe none of this would have happened in the first place, and Bill would have been defeated before things got out of hand. With that said, the ball was in Stan's court. Ford was ready to make things right so long as he can get a chance. Of course, Stan granted him this chance, reuniting the original mystery twins. With more anomalies outside in the world beyond Gravity Falls, strange signals from the Arctic Ocean, a whole new world needs to be protected. The future was clear for both of them. As everyone celebrated their final night together in Gravity Falls, summer coming to a close, the characters we all knew and loved gathered around a campfire, leaving the past behind them and excited to head onto their respective futures. They indulged in burning all of Ford's Cipher artifacts, scrolls, carpets, the window, anything related to Bill went up in flames, as they shared s'mores and spent time together until the sunrise. But this left one more thing. Well, three more things. Ford's journals. What to do with them? Do they go in the fire, or do they find a weirder, more Gravity Fallsier way to dispose of them? Ultimately, Mabel came up with what would be the final decision, throwing the journals into the bottomless pit. Where they end up, who ends up with them, no one knows, but that's okay. What matters is someone will find the story of a man who learned what it truly means to be a hero, what it means to inspire others, what happens when you put your trust in the wrong people, and what it means to really be happy. You guys know what happens from here. Soos runs the Mystery Shack, Stan and Ford embark on an adventure, and Dipper and Mabel get on the bus to return home. However, there's one little tidbit, our only glimpse of Dipper and Mabel after they return to Piedmont, that you may not have seen. An animatic of the original extended Weirdmageddon 3 credits shows that Mabel presents her scrapbook to classmates, assumably some sort of what I did over my summer vacation project. Yet the only real reaction she gets out of anyone is her teacher's dismay when Waddles pops out of her backpack. This goes to show a few things. One, Mabel has photographic evidence of the supernatural occurrences in Gravity Falls, so I'm not sure if Dipper plans on sharing that these things exist with the world, especially since Weirdmageddon was contained to the town, but they have proof. This also proves Mabel has Waddles alongside her for the long haul. She's probably not supposed to bring him to school, but you can't help it. I love his adorable face. Finally, considering the emotionless reaction of the class in the animatic, it's entirely possible that the rest of the world just isn't all that impressed by the weirdness of Gravity Falls. Like, yeah, Mabel, that's cool, but I went to Daytona Beach over my summer vacation. Check out my sick tan. But of course, we all know the best part of Gravity Falls is its wonderful cast of characters. Now, it's always hard to say goodbye, but we can speculate on what happened to them after the show ends, based on all of the knowledge that we have, so let's try to do that now. First, let's take a look at some of the main characters. Dipper has Mystery Hunter in his blood. That's not gonna stop just because he left Gravity Falls. I'm willing to bet he fulfills his dream, which was explored in Legend of the Gobblewonker, by becoming a famous cryptid hunter. He probably starts as soon as he can and uses modern tools to get himself out there. He'll probably make a blog and a YouTube channel and sort of continue Ford's legacy, but in a modern time. Especially based on the Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained shorts that we got, it's safe to assume that he'll continue a series like that, and hopefully get fame and notoriety from it. For Dipper, the mystery never stops. One of Mabel's most memorable factors is all of her crazy sweaters. And considering her love for making sweaters and clothing throughout the series, all with very unique designs and patterns, it would make sense that she would go into fashion. She's creative, she's outgoing, and she takes initiative. I mean, that's the perfect recipe in becoming a successful fashion designer. She'll probably be met with roaring success because of who she is, not only because of her talent, but because of her personality. And she'll share her passion and creativity with others for the rest of her life. By the end of the series, we see Soos getting what it seems like he always wanted, running the Mystery Shack, following in Stan's footsteps. He probably runs it very successfully for as long as he can before eventually passing it down, which would make the Mystery Shack this very special thing that gets handed down for generations. Besides that, I could see Soos pursuing a career in gaming development and opening his own chain of arcade restaurant hybrids, judging by his love of them in the series. Think David Buster's, but with that Soos flair. It's safe to say that he'll hopefully marry his girlfriend Melody and take care of Abuelita as he grows older and older, because he's such a genuinely caring person. He'll probably also be a great father. Now, we do get to see what Stan and Ford are doing after the series, but we can speculate even more on that. Sure, he's partaking in adventures with Ford, but I also believe that Stan might eventually find true love along his journey, finding a mate who's just as persuasive, cunning, and hilarious as he is, his other half. It's safe to say Ford will continue his exploration of the world's anomalies, while eventually finding a new apprentice like he once aimed to do with Dipper. However, this time not excluding his apprentice from the rest of the world, but showing his apprentice the world and his awesome family. I don't think that Ford will ever find his other half or somebody to call his own, but I also don't think romance is on the top of his list of priorities anyways. He's found his passion in life, his drive, and what he wants to work for, and what he lives for, and that's studying anomalies. Thankfully, it looks like he's getting to do that. Wendy was always a firecracker who took charge of her own life and is full of ambitions, far past working at the Mystery Shack. I think similar to Dipper, she would find notoriety in the occupation of a hunter, combining her very cool demeanor with her lumberjack skills passed down from her father. She's definitely not a city person. I can't see her moving to New York and trying to pursue Broadway. She'll probably lead a rough and tumble life of adventure and be very successful at it. Pacifica is one of my favorite characters because of just how far she came throughout the series. Starting off as a complete brat and in the end realizing humility and how bad her family truly was, owning up to that. I think she'll continue separating her legacy from her parents and humble herself and create her own path to fame and riches without their assistance. Maybe even becoming business partners with Mabel's fashion brand. Pacifica is very smart and driven, so she'll probably end up becoming like a philanthropist, sharing her wealth with the world instead of hiding it and keeping it to herself, like her family did. And because she has that clarity and reflectiveness, realizing the error of her past family's ways, which would let her avoid making the same mistakes they did. God, I don't even want to imagine Gideon grown up. That's gonna be terrifying. He probably continues to try and become a regular, normal kid with a normal life, and finds moderate success in accomplishing that. I can see him going the way that a lot of child actors do, where they eventually hate acting and they just become normal people, like look at Macaulay Culkin. Hopefully he'll help his mother fully recover from causing her to go insane from his previously insidious behavior, and as he grows older, him and his crew of former prison mates would take over Bud Gleeful's family business of a car salesman, this time without any shady antics. When we last saw McGunket, he was doing a lot better, and he looked like he was on his way to getting his memories back and reclaiming his sanity. We kind of already saw McGunket's happily ever after, and we can assume he'll continue to find recognition and wealth in his inventions, reconnecting with his family along the way. It would be a happy ending for a heartwarming scientist who got dealt the wrong hand, and I like to think that everything works out for McGunket. Robbie's a character that requires a lot more speculation than most. He went through a lot in the series, dating Wendy, then getting broken up with by Wendy, then finding love with Tambury in the end. He'll probably continue to work on his music career, ultimately peaking as an underground rock band that sounds kind of good. Not good, but like not bad either, you know what I mean? It's enough to sustain himself, but eventually he'd become an indie rock duo with Tambry, as the two stayed together throughout the years. Their duo would find a little bit more success with her more stable, catchier direction. Bill is an unstoppable force of weirdness that's incredibly intelligent and incredibly evil. And as prophesized, warned, and heeded by many sources of the series, he'll probably eventually find a way to return. Eventually. Even if he does come back, I'm sure Ford and all of them would have created some sort of Bill Cipher protocol on how to handle his return. And I can't see him ever being truly successful, especially after getting so close last time and failing. But you never know. Maybe he's inhibiting the body of the guy reading this right now. I mean, he's not, but like, think about it. Maybe he is. I don't know. And there you have it, folks. That's what happens after Weirdmageddon in the world of Gravity Falls. What do you think? What else do you think could have happened? No answer is a wrong answer, unless one day we finally get official material that goes beyond everything we explored today. And I would love that.
As I've begun to revisit Gravity Falls on this channel, one concept that was always just so damn unique to me was the Dorito Devil himself, Bill Cipher, gaining a physical form in our reality. A catastrophic event that finally came to fruition at the end of Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future, going into the Weirdmageddon trilogy. And although I was totally content with how Bill appeared in Weirdmageddon, I do wish they did more with the fact that he was in our reality and that he had what seemed to be unlimited power just confined within the bubble of Gravity Falls itself. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he would have looked great as a giant pyramid the entire time, but if there are things I wanted more of out of this arc that simply could not have existed due to time, it's moments like the cold open of Weirdmageddon Part 1, the different layers of evolution that Bill quickly went through before completely manifesting in Gravity Falls. Like what, he's blue and then metal and has human-like guts? Or even right after, where he's a giant rotating pyramid with multiple limbs, appearing jet black with a touch of a multicolored gradient. Now that is a look that he should have rocked more. Right now is a difficult time in the world for many people, and we cannot thank our patrons enough for their support and kindness. This includes Elijah, aka Mother Goose 27, whose channel we wanted to give the spotlight. Goose's channel features the comfy, relaxing let's plays of the good old days of YouTube, alongside some personal stories and retrospectives, including The Office and Gravity Falls. Please, we want to support the smaller creators as they have supported us. So go subscribe, check out a video, leave a like, and a comment. I can't wait to see how this channel, alongside many others, grow. Again, no pressure to check out our Patreon or pledge. Now back to your regularly uploaded programming. We also get a similar but brief transformation in Weirdmageddon 3, Bill assuming the form of a giant, layered, grotesque, multi-limbed pyramid, but this time like red, you know, like when he got angry in Dreamscapers. It was cool. But when it comes to wanting more, sometimes a look at more can be a blessing and a curse. It can be cathartic yet taunting. They thought of this, but we didn't get this, even though I understand why. And the many transformations of Bill Cipher is no exception. Years ago, while we were in the thick of Weirdmageddon, we actually were gifted with concept art by character designer Robert Ryan Corey. That, wouldn't you know, features different transformations of what Bill's physical form could have been. Now, we have absolutely no context to this, so I thought it would be fun to look at these forms and try to re-jog my memory, providing speculation and ideas for how these pieces of concept art and designs could have been implemented into the show proper. With all that said, let's dive in. Right off the bat, I'm going to start with what I find to be the coolest one. He looks like a boss fight pulled straight out of a 3D platformer. A gigantic, I guess humanoid Bill, with a tiny pyramid-esque shape for a head, and his standard one eye, attached to what essentially looks like a roided up cyborg, with a second gigantic eye in the center, a pretty buff torso, lanky, elongated arms, with Dipper in his clutches, and what I find to be the most interesting detail, very short robotic legs and feet, with the 6-fingered symbol on the inside. Aside from the cool factor, the use of forward symbol always piqued my interest because it had me thinking, were the 10 symbols going to have a different role in relation to Bill? Because this piece of art has always given me the vibe that Bill more or less absorbed Stanford. Maybe he extracted his soul. Some variation of the story that delved deeper into the symbols, or more so, the characters represented by them. What sort of magic or cosmic power enabled these ordinary people to come together, stand on a depiction of the Zodiac, and straight up glow? Is there a power within each and every one of them? Then maybe Bill would have been able to siphon out of each and every one of them, becoming more powerful and transforming as a result. Because again, with Dipper and Bill's clutches in this particular piece, this piece of art could have came into play when Ford was initially captured by Cipher. When you revisit the scene, Ford alludes to the Zodiac, and Bill even gives a strong nod to the six-fingered symbol, so perhaps substituting the "why did the old man do this" bit, Ford could have became a different kind of prisoner, Bill zapping and absorbing him, evolving into the form we see here, which would kind of make sense given the giant eye. Think about it, Stanford is knowledge, Bill is also knowledge. They are both walking curriculums, with the notion of Bill sees everything, absorbing one of the most intelligent and unique men in the world, again alongside any potential cosmic forces. They should have explained it more. I can see this second enlarged eye being representative of Bill gaining all of the information that Stanford possesses. Now he truly sees everything. He has an extra pair of eyes. And I don't know, maybe he can shoot even more lasers out of them. Ooh. Moving on to the next piece of concept art, which has me thinking along the same lines of Bill absorbing or merging with someone, we have this faceless horned demon with Bill's proper body branching out of the back. He even still has the bow tie and the floating top hat. Now this very much so reminds me of the Henchmaniacs. As Bill's pawn, again, perhaps he could use them as a power boost. Or maybe he imbued them with a piece of himself, allowing them to transform into and manifest a piece of Cipher onto their body. Or maybe this was just a form Bill could have shapeshifted into without any additional power-up. He sees one of our beloved characters on the streets of Gravity Falls, he transforms into this and begins chasing them. Maybe in addition to Gideon and his prison crew, or substituting them, this transformation or extension of Bill could have been the one chasing down Dipper, Wendy, and eventually Soos to Mabel's bubble. This does have a look of a creature that would chase after a car. I can perfectly see this variation of Bill chasing down the car through the weirdness bubbles. Ultimately, I am satisfied with what we got. I thought it was a great way to redeem Gideon, but this is Bill. He feasts on nightmares. So the idea of him shapeshifting into a literal walking nightmare, it's something I'm surprised they passed up. But at the same time, these two pieces of concept art do break the idea that Bill as a whole will always have a predominantly triangular form, and not just reducing that to a component of his look. So I can see why they were ultimately passed on, and that takes me to the third and final piece of concept art, one that I understand why they didn't keep it, a 6, probably 10-eyed Bill Cipher, in the form of a gigantic pyramid with 3 layers, 6 limbs, a giant top hat, no bow tie, larger than the literal mountains, running amok with Mabel captured. Now the main point of touching on this one isn't more so, oh I wish we got this in the show, but more of, oh we actually kinda did get this in the show. This is very similar to the other aforementioned pyramid forms that Bill possessed in 2 of the 3 Weirdmageddon episodes. I think this piece of art best embodies the mayhem, yet consistency that Alex Hirsch desired. Bill's a triangle. Any form of him has to clearly be a triangle. But that doesn't mean they can't go fucking nuts with multiple limbs and tongues and eyes. It just can't break the mold of a triangle. That being said, I still would have loved to see any of those forms rampage through Gravity Falls, destroying everything in sight. Not just for Bill to unleash the henchmaniacs, throw a giant pyramid in the sky, and turn everyone into stone. For him to take out actual wrath on the Pines family, really rubbing in the most petty and destructive nature that he won. But hey, what can you do? I've probably said it way too much in this video, but I love Weirdmageddon just the way it was, even if I do have desires on how it could have been improved or, well, just expanded upon. Animation tends to feature memorable antagonists that leave a long-lasting impression on our narrative taste that molds greater expectations when consuming media. Villains can be brilliant, menacing, ruthless, but also charming, amusing, and flat out hilarious. And of course, villains can be batshit insane. And then there's Bill Cipher, who's all of the aforementioned, while also being a floating triangle. Bill Cipher is without a doubt one of my favorite villains in animation. Has our growing backlog of content on him not give that away? Something that causes this man to still give me chills 4 years after the conclusion of Gravity Falls is thinking about everything that went on off screen. Bill Cipher is a con man, someone who knows how to get what he wants. wants, no matter how long the con itself is, embarking on a scheme that spanned thousands, if not trillions of years. And even though he ultimately was defeated, there was a small window of time, the event referred to as Weirdmageddon, where Bill won. So today, I want to go through this plan, the origins, and timeline of Bill's Cipher, what we saw in and out of episodes in order, how Bill went from just another flat shape in the second dimension to the demon who unleashed an apocalypse. I'm going to show the world just how clever Bill manages to be, and maybe you'll even walk away with a greater appreciation for him. With all that said, let's dive in. Cipher's story begins a very long time ago in the second dimension, a home he greatly detested, describing it as flat minds in a flat world with flat dreams. And according to an interview with Entertainment Weekly back in 2015, Alex Hirsch went as far as to say, if you think Stan's relationship with his family is bad, Bill's is worse. And in his own Reddit AMA, when questioned on if he has a family, Bill simply responded, not anymore. We can infer that the inhabitants of the second dimension tend to be a little bit vanilla. The dimension as a whole was just boring. Not much was going on. No one really had any big aspirations. No one was down to get weird and party. Although not much is known about Bill's species, I assume his array of abilities are just native, so it probably aggravated him to no end that those surrounded by him also had access to limitless knowledge, because he simply did nothing with that knowledge. They were stick in the muds. He didn't see eye to eye with anyone there because they were the exact opposite of him. So how did Bill cope with the situation? Obviously, he would do what any rational person would do and use his fire abilities to burn down his dimension, incinerating it to his last molecule, and committing genocide upon his entire species, including his family. Wait, what? Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Bill appears to have an affinity towards fire. Those blue flames are absolutely his go-to throughout the series. Like, if you ever wanted to know Bill's middle name, it's Arson. Although this was a completely psychotic act, we know through the almighty axolotl that Bill wasn't completely content with this decision. But we can't disrupt the timeline. So, staying on track, after being fresh out of a home dimension, Bill was finally free, which would lead him to conquer the Nightmare Realm. An intergalactic wasteland between dimensions that houses some of the most despicable criminals throughout the multiverse. Much to Bill's liking, it lacks any rules. However, it's unfortunate that that also applies scientifically, as a lack of physics caused the Nightmare Realm to collapse in on itself. Conquering the Nightmare Realm was fine, but at the end of the day, Bill felt as if he traded in one prison for another. He wanted to spread his liberation of rules and order across all of existence. However, during this reign, Bill learned of a prophecy, one that was just music to his ears. The prophecy spoke of a day where Bill would successfully merge the Nightmare Realm with the third dimension, conquering the Earth and shortly after, the entire solar system. The event prophesized in question would be referred to as Weirdmageddon. But in order to achieve Weirdmageddon, Bill needed to figure out a way to manifest himself inside that reality. Being a dream demon and all, he lacks a proper physical form that would allow him to cross over into the third dimension. But he's still able to wander into the minds of others, and that includes possession. So if he pulls a few strings, in theory, he'd be able to manipulate a human being into forging a gateway between Earth and the Nightmare Realm, properly adopting the title of Bill Cipher, as his true identity would apparently evaporate one with an expression of horror and ecstasy on their face. Bill tried to get in with the ancient Egyptians, who attempted to create a portal for Bill, but alas, it only functioned for 10 minutes, unleashing a jackal-headed man from the Nightmare Realm, Anubis. Furious, Bill tormented the Egyptians with nightmares, and in an attempt to appease him, the Egyptians erected giant stone tributes in Bill's image. But the arms and top hats broke off and eroded over time, becoming the pyramids we know today. But Bill didn't give up, and set his sights on the natives of a place with unusual paranormal activity, Gravity Falls. Right off the bat, Bill knew exactly what kind of person he would target in order to achieve Weirdmageddon. Those who had questions that they felt needed to be answered. Those who were intelligent, much more capable than the rest, but someone just dumb enough to con into an apocalypse. One of Bill's earliest examples actually being a shaman named MODOK. Through the invisible link logic and codes found in Journal 3, we can decipher what went down between Bill and MODOK the Wise. As Bill's first pawn in what would become Gravity Falls, MODOK was instructed to erect an interdimensional gateway between the Nightmare Realm and Earth. Although this portal was made out of wood, and with MODOK being a shaman and all, I assumed this portal would have been powered through spells and other forms of magic. MODOK was also responsible for inscribing the incantation that brought Bill into Ford's life. Although it's unknown, but in my opinion doubtful, if MODOK inscribed the Zodiac that would be used to vanquish Bill. And I say it's doubtful because when MODOK discovered that he was being used by Bill, learning of Cipher's prophecy, not only did he destroy the wooden portal, but he set himself ablaze, ending his life and any further possibility of Bill's manipulation. And yeah, as you guys probably already know from the main series, is that Bill's association with fire is made pretty clear. From here on out, we can assume that Bill rained havoc on the other natives of Gravity Falls, as at some point, they were provided with the information needed to create the Zodiac with 10 symbols that would be used to temporarily vanquish Bill. However, with the incantations left in the cave, Bill would not remain separated from Gravity Falls for long. Eventually, Gravity Falls would be populated by Quentin Tremblay and other pioneers, and in the meanwhile, Bill would have two significant encounters, as Bill would eventually cross paths with none other than George Washington, whom Bill aided by giving the secrets to defeat the British. I'm not even making this up. But when Washington's attempt at a steam-powered portal sunk into the swamp, Bill plagued him with nightmares so severe that Washington ground his teeth into dust in his sleep, having to compensate with wooden replacements. Hoping to satiate Bill's bloodlust, Washington added him onto the $1 bill. And let's really think about this. Every depiction of Bill is a gateway he can see through. Think of how many $1 bills exist. Yeah, Bill has eyes everywhere. Bill also helped Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landing. Bill was hoping Kubrick could convince NASA to build a portal, but when the proposal was rejected, Bill once again unleashed a plague of nightmares, which, in a twist of fate, actually ended up helping Kubrick's film career. And at some point in time, we know that Bill encountered Rick Sanchez, as one of Rick's vials found in Morty's Mind Blowers is labeled Bill C. Rick is probably the best person you could go to for a portal, until you realize he's a pretty big asshole. But Bill's own ball would not be rolling until the tale of two stands began to unfold. The curious mind that is Stanford Pines arriving in Gravity Falls, spending 6 years researching the town for its anomalies. However, after hitting a roadblock while researching the origins for all the anomalies in Gravity Falls, Ford decided to do a little bit of hiking, clear his mind, and maybe he'll find something new along the way. And find something new he did, stumbling upon the cave full of incantations, reciting them aloud, and allowing Bill Cipher to enter Ford's life. Encountering Stanford must have been like Christmas to Bill. Such a very intelligent and sharp mind, clouded by childhood trauma and insecurity. Tough luck with bullies, his own parents, and even his twin brother. Might as well be wearing a shirt that says emotional vulnerability. Introducing himself to Ford in a dream and impressing him with a display of limitless knowledge, Bill quickly had his new pawn. Revealing to Stanford that the supernatural occurrences in Gravity Falls is due to a rift between dimensions, Bill was able to get development on Ford's portal underway. However, things quickly grew complicated as Ford involved another partner, Fiddleford McGucket. Although McGucket was eager to provide Ford with help and make history along the way, being Ford's old college roommate, he was able to recognize what ideas felt off, what felt like Stanford, and what felt like someone else. Fiddleford was able to see what Stanford couldn't see, as Stanford spiraled further and further into an obsession, transforming his home into the Church of Cipher. Fiddleford kept his guard up, aware that something was off, unaware that Stanford's body was being possessed by a floating triangle. However, things came to a head on January 18th, 1982, the night where the interdimensional portal was finally ready for its first big test. However, after Fiddleford was tangled up into the rope and briefly sent through the portal himself, he was met with the horrifying image of Bill removing his exoskeleton in order to feast. After being recovered by Stanford, Fiddleford's mind was absolutely warped, speaking absolute nonsense before reciting a prophecy of his own. When gravity falls and Earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye. Fiddleford promptly quit the project, straying off into his own adventure that would become the Society of the Blind Eye, which, yeah, we know how that turns out. But Stanford just lost another friend. He finally let someone in after so long, and he ended up driving him away in the name of science? Things finally began to click with Stanford, like for real this time. The loss of Fiddleford finally instilled enough doubt for Ford to confront Bill. However, Cipher has absolutely no fucks given, asserting to Stanford, yes, this portal is meant for something horrible, horribly fun. And with this, Ford learns of Bill's intentions with Weirdmageddon. Ford shut the project down and shut Bill out of his head, doing so with the installation of a metal plate inside his head. Of course, Ford will recruit his twin brother Stanley in an attempt to get Stanley to take Journal 1 and bury it as far as possible from Ford. This led to a fight, as Stan was furious to hear that his brother reached out to him for the first time in years, only to tell him, hey, get this thing and you as far away from me as possible. They fight, Ford mistakenly stumbles into the portal and traverses the Nightmare Realm alongside other interdimensional escapades for 30 long years. And much to Bill's dismay, not much progress was made over this 30 years. Why? Because no pawn was good enough. Although, Stan did open up Ford's house to the public, transforming it into the tourist attraction known as the Mystery Shack, which in turn exposed the citizens of Gravity Falls to Ford's lingering Bill Cipher imagery. This in itself kinda caused Bill to become a very quiet mascot, as he can be seen all over the town in seasons 1 and 2. Graffiti, arcade machines, currency, his influence was everywhere, and I would 100% pin this on the Mystery Shack. However, it's going to be tough for Bill to find a curious cat because of the Society of the Blind Eye, an organization whose entire purpose is erasing unpleasant or bad memories. When it comes to all the supernatural activity in Gravity Falls, the chance of someone questioning the things around them was slim because those memories can just be erased in an instant. Not to mention the effects of the Blind Eye's memory gun can really dumb someone down, so Bill's qualifications for an ideal pawn was out the window until an outsider came into the mix and stuck around. Because keep in mind, although the Mystery Shack does attract tourists, they're not gonna hang around long enough for Bill to swoop in. Yet, the arrival of Dipper and Mabel Pines changed everything. Dipper was someone who questioned the unknown, who craved knowledge, and wanted to learn more about the world around him. And because of all the depictions of Bill around town, I'm sure he was well aware of Dipper and his arrival for a long time. However, he was hesitant to engage with Dipper due to his correlation with the Zodiac that could vanquish Bill. However, everyone would get a little push once Gideon Gleeful came into the mix. Equipped with Journal Number 2, Gideon summoned Bill Cipher in a mission to obtain the deed to the Mystery Shack, thus being able to take over. Bill, realizing that Gideon is clouded with vengeance and directly involved with the Pines family, made him the best pawn in 30 years, where he can still weasel his way to the portal. Not to mention, I doubt Bill was only keeping tabs on Gravity Falls, but Earth and the human race in general. I don't believe that 30 years was just spent looking around Gravity Falls, but looking around everywhere for any kind of pawn. However, once the events of Dreamscaperers actually got into the mix, Bill was able to directly interact with Dipper, Mabel, and Soos, causing Bill to deduce that those involved in the Zodiac that could be responsible for his downfall, they're either kids or not the sharpest tool in the shed. Thus, they aren't people he should avoid, they're pawns he can control. Not to mention, being in Stan's mind probably gave him some very valuable information. Alas, the plans of Gideon fall through. Bill faces off against Dipper, Mabel, and Soos, almost loses, but it reminds everyone who's in control when it comes to the mindscape. I imagine being in Stanley's mind is also how Bill got the information that Stan is still trying to activate the portal, trying to bring Ford back, and thus unknowingly allowing Bill to enter through the third dimension, should the portal actually be strong enough to connect directly with the Nightmare Realm. Because of this, Bill has to make sure that Dipper doesn't interfere, that the portal goes off without a hitch. So, after peeping around town, keeping his eye on Dipper, Bill makes himself known for the first time in season 2 during the episode Sock Opera, turning Dipper's quest for answers against him, much like with MODOK, Ford, and Gideon, hijacking Dipper's body and destroying McGucket's laptop, which would have given away the identity of the author and thus causing a Pines family intervention, which in itself could have entertained the notion of the portal potentially being shut down, and thus screwing Bill out of his plans. After screwing around with Dipper and Mabel for a bit, Bill is ultimately outsmarted by Mabel as she pits Dipper's body against Bill, and Cipher teases that big things are coming, returning to the shadows. Of course, the portal does eventually go off, but it is still way too unstable and is only strong enough to bring back Ford. However, as a result of the portal activating, a new interdimensional rift was created, Bill's ticket to Weirdmageddon. And thus we reach the climax of his plan. Aware of Ford's return and the interdimensional rift, Bill feels as if victory is already in his hands. After being summoned by an imprisoned Gideon Gleeful who just faced a crushing defeat at the hands of Dipper and Mabel, Bill's deal with Gideon occurred off screen, but we can't connect enough dots. Gideon wanted freedom, and in exchange, he would have to pledge allegiance to Bill, promising to become his servant once Weirdmageddon arrives. However, Bill makes one fatal mistake. He gets cocky. Bill mockingly visits Ford in his dreams. Although Ford's metal plate prevents possession, I guess dreams just aren't off limits. As Bill taunts Ford over his recent deal with Gideon, and how that sooner than later, Weirdmageddon will be here. This causes Ford to go absolutely supernova. Spilling his origin to Dipper, the two create a magical unicorn barrier around the Mystery Shack, preventing Bill from possessing anyone who enters those quarters. And generally, Dipper and Ford are on their toes, awaiting for Bill's next move. If Bill just kept his mouth shut, if he didn't pay that visit to Ford, things could have gone down a lot differently in Cipher's favor. But no, he had to be a prideful asshole. But remember what I said about Bill keeping an eye on the Pines family, and that any depiction of him serves as another gateway for him to see through? All of that gave him more options. In keeping an eye on Dipper and Mabel, he was able to find another pawn ripe for the taking. We know him. I don't know if everyone loves him, but it's local time-traveling screw-up Blendon. If you ever wonder what happened between Bill and Blendon, but you never got the answers, you never were able to pick up Journal 3, well, then I have the answers for you. You see, Blendon works for one of Bill's greatest adversaries, Time Baby. Blendon is also the butt of every joke. He's a punching bag for the Time Police. And after losing Globnar to Dipper and Mabel, the heckling towards Blendon doubled. Although he got his job back, he was still being teased and put down by coworkers. Time Baby himself called him no friend in Blandon. And because Blendon time traveled back to Gravity Falls so often, Bill was able to successfully infiltrate his mind and wait for the right moment. Bill manifested inside Blendon's dreams, claiming that he could make sure Time Baby would never bother him again. Oh god. All Blendon had to do was shake Bill's hand. Under pressure and desperate for Time Baby's respect, Blendon accepted, becoming the perfect pawn for this particular job because, well, he kinda has infinite do-overs on account of time travel. Recognizing the cracks in Dipper and Mabel's relationship due to his previous observations of the two, the rest came pretty easy to Bill. Just sit back, relax, and wait for them to fall apart. Dipper and Mabel have their big fight, Mabel takes the wrong backpack with the rift inside, and Bill is able to time travel to her aid. Inside Blendon's body, Bill manipulates Mabel into an offer she can't refuse, a summer that will never end. She never has to grow up and things never have to change between her and her brother. Of course, it's all bullshit. Bill just needed to get his hands on the rift, and as soon as he does, he destroys it, unleashing Weirdmageddon. You guys know the rest from here. Bill unleashes Weirdmageddon. He's at the top of his game, ruling Gravity Falls with an iron fist, throwing a party that never ends. He kills Time Baby, so he delivered on his promise to Blendon, although Time Baby really deserves his own video. But after being caught in Gravity Falls' law of weirdness magnetism, I hate that term, I really wish they came up with something less goofy, Bill turns to Ford for help. Of course, Ford is all, nah man. Dipper and Mabel are able to save the day. They're able to rescue everyone. Try the Zodiac. It fails because of Stan and Ford. Bill goes inside the wrong Stan's mind. Stanley gets his memory erased, and Bill is defeated. However, in his final moments, Bill calls out to the Axolotl. And this is where I want to wrap it back to the beginning. In Dipper and Mabel Curse of the Time Pirates, the almighty Axolotl reveals that Bill Cipher does miss his home. There is some level of regret, but in order to atone for his sins, he has to take a different form in a different time, which I believe to be King from the Owl House. Although I wasn't the biggest fan of Bill during Weirdmageddon, like part 1, he's amazing. Part 2, I got tired of the frat stick and now lack of a plan, but I gotta say, Mabel's bubble was a genius invention. His only downfall, it was that he didn't consider the idea of Dipper growing, Dipper maturing, and by extension, being able to snap his sister out of it, having Mabel realize how much she's grown and matured, and the group coming back together stronger than ever. Again, Bill's cockiness was his downfall. If he just petrified Dipper or petrified Mabel, he wouldn't have had to worry, but he wanted to see them struggle. He didn't think they were that big of a threat to the point where they could undermine all of his efforts. And that's what did him in. But for everything else, I can't help but to love Bill as a villain. He's hilarious, he's insane, he's all-powerful, but above all else, he knows how to read people. He knows how to spot weakness, and he knows how to turn that weakness into an advantage for himself. Was he short-sighted? Of course. He only has one eye, but for what it was worth, he's a man who knows how to get what he wants, even if he is potentially a weird skull, cat, demon thing now.
Remember, in Gravity Falls, there is no one you can trust. No one you can trust.
Usually the cartoons that are the most notable and leave the biggest impact do just that because they transcend whatever it means to be just a cartoon. They become something bigger, they stand for something more. And I can't think of a cartoon that transcended the medium more than Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls wasn't a show that you watched, it was an experience that you participated in, and it was a community that you felt a part of. And anybody that points to Gravity Falls and says, it's one of the greatest cartoons ever made, yes, it's true, it's just a simplistic way of putting it. But I want to go into more detail. I want to talk about why Gravity Falls was so great. I'm Nemo, and I want to talk about how Gravity Falls changed everything. It was funny. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and okay, no, I'm just kidding. So guys, to understand the story of Gravity Falls, and it's a long story, you gotta look at the person who made it. In this case, Gravity Falls came from the brilliant mind of cartoon legend Alex Hirsch. Alex Hirsch's name is pretty famous now. He's the closest thing I think we have in the cartoon community to a celebrity. This larger-than-life character. I mean, at this point, Gravity Falls is synonymous with Alex Hirsch's name. The two go hand in hand. He was born in Piedmont, California. I totally probably mispronounced that, but hey, I'm from Michigan. You get some leeway. It's the Midwest. We have an accent, I guess. He did the classic cartoonist thing, a talented young artist who ended up going to CalArts, where he, as we've said in other videos, got very close with J.G. Quintel and Pendleton Ward. And after graduating from CalArts, he actually got his first job in the industry, like a lot of other popular creators, on the marvelous misadventures of Flapjack. But Alex actually ended up going in a completely different direction, leaving Cartoon Network and going on to Disney, working on the show Fishhooks. Now, whatever you want to say about this show, however you thought about it, however old you were when it came out, maybe you didn't even watch it, Fishhooks is a really funny show, and I remember watching it, and though I wasn't the biggest fan, I did remember laughing way more than I expected. I knew that Alex Hirsch worked on it, but when researching for this video, I found out that he actually developed the series for television, which is pretty huge. I mean, going from just working on one cartoon to developing another one, that's initiative. It's there on Fishhooks where he met a future collaborator, Justin Roiland. They would go on to do so much together. Justin Roiland, of course, co-created Rick and Morty. He's another legend. Fishhooks was a hit, and he worked on it for a while, but soon Disney grabbed Alex and pulled him into their executive office, told him to pitch a show. When looking back on this time developing Gravity Falls and coming up with the idea for it, Alex says that he pulled from his own childhood. I mean, he himself is a twin with his twin sister, so he decided to make a show about that. Except all of the things he imagined as a kid, all of the things he wished were real, the monsters, the aliens, they would be. He would also describe Gravity Falls as a town where every conspiracy theory is true, and I think that's the perfect way of putting it. Alex pulled a lot from his life while developing Gravity Falls. Soos, as a character, was actually based off of a roommate of his named Jesus, combining the ideas of his childhood paired with the perfect summer and a healthy dose of weird and supernatural. Alex's end product was a cartoon called Gravity Falls. The cartoon focused on twin siblings Dipper and Mabel as they spent the summer with their uncle Stan, who ran a tourist trap in the small town of Gravity Falls, Oregon, where, like I said before, basically every weird thing exists there. It is, in my opinion, a perfect premise, and it turned into an even better show. Disney greenlit it, and after some development, the first episode of Gravity Falls aired in 2012, and immediately it was something special. By the very first episode, this show was growing an audience. People were falling in love with it, and it found an audience immediately. Maybe it was the heart, maybe it was the incredible animation, maybe because it was a breath of fresh air. It was a 22-minute show, something that we hadn't seen in a while. The writing was great, the voice cast was great. Everything about this was entertaining and funny and perfect, but there was something else. From the jump, from the very first episode, that last scene when Uncle Stan goes behind the vending machine, Gravity Falls made itself clear that it was going to be something different. It was going to be a mystery, and the show was not what it seemed. It wasn't going to be some one-off adventure about two twin siblings interacting with all these supernatural creatures. Gravity Falls is setting out to tell a story, and it did. Before I get into the mystery aspect, I want to talk about everything else that made Gravity Falls special. First of all, you could watch the show and just see how much raw effort was put into it, how beautiful it is, the music, everything is top-notch and passion-driven. There's just so much raw effort put into every frame of the show. One thing that Gravity Falls got prided on, and I think is super necessary to talk about in this video, is how they aced the family dynamic. Grumple Stan, Dipper, and Mabel are one of the best representations of family I've ever seen in the show. Alex had this one rule that not a lot of other shows followed, where Dipper and Mabel, no matter what they got into, no matter what fight they had, never hated each other. So many shows go for the weird dynamic where siblings have to hate each other to create some sort of weird comedic tension or something, but Alex created a pair of siblings that felt real, that could fight and yell and get angry, but also laugh together a second later, because honestly, that's what it means to have a brother or sister. On top of that, Grunkle Stan was the perfect representation of a chaperoning adult who could be fun and loose, but also really care about his niece and nephew. I think they're his niece and nephew. The family dynamic is weird. And these incredible characters were brought to life by some top-notch voice acting. There's some great names on the show. Christian Shaw, and if you're questioning if this really is a passion project, most of the characters in the main cast, Soos and Grunkle Stan, are voiced by Alex Hirsch himself. He was literally just like, let me in the booth, let me do it. And he did it for the entire series. Can you imagine being a showrunner, working on every aspect of the show, and then also getting in the booth and voicing characters? That's insane. That is passion. On top of that, Gravity Falls balanced incredible humor with tender moments and lessons that didn't feel forced and actually kind of came naturally. The show was sweet, and most importantly, Gravity Falls, above all else, had so much heart. And this heart was paired with incredibly interesting supernatural concepts. This show was anything from Monster of the Week to Magical Object of the Week. Anything and everything happened in Gravity Falls, and it was always weird. But no matter how weird the concepts got, it was all grounded by this family, this core group of people that made it so relatable. On top of that, the world building in this show was huge. Gravity Falls felt like a town anybody could visit. We got to know the locals. They were all given names, and they were reoccurring characters. We got to know the weird rituals of Gravity Falls. We got to see the Gravity Falls culture, their summer weens, where they ate, how they lived. It just felt like a real place. And I'm really sad that it wasn't. All of these were just perfect ingredients that made Gravity Falls such an A1 show. This stuff is like the sauce, for real. Everybody loved Gravity Falls. The more it aired, the bigger the audience got, and all of a sudden, it had a huge presence online. But that's not just because the show was good. Because the thing I haven't touched on yet, the thing that it really changed for the entire landscape of television, was its mystery aspect. Everything from the picture that flashes at the end of the theme song to the code that would air at the end of the show, Gravity Falls was a puzzle to solve. And solve people did. Soon, entire communities, YouTube channels, all sorts of people were coming together to try to figure out the show, to try to figure out the mysteries involved. And besides the main mystery of who was the author, they also left little breadcrumbs along the way, little other mysteries to solve. We had things like Blendon Blandon, a time-traveling character who appeared throughout the show before his episode. And fans noticed. They would screen cap, they would zoom in, they'd be like, who's this bald guy? They would try to theorize and figure out what was going on, and then we'd get a payoff in that episode, The Time Traveler's Pig. It was brilliant. This kind of interaction, this kind of mystery solving, made everybody feel like they were a part of the show. Like we were along the ride for Gravity Falls with Dipper and Mabel. You wouldn't just watch an episode and go about your day. You'd watch an episode and you'd write down the code and you'd try to figure it out. And then you'd look online and you'd like watch a breakdown of the episode and you'd try to figure out what was going on. It was different from any other show anybody had ever seen. And the crew was paying attention. They were watching us just like we were watching them. When fans got too close to figuring out who the true author was, Alex Hirsch faked a leak, pinning the author on McGunket and fooling most of the internet. This man is a genius. The show kept its momentum all the way to season 2, and by that point, the show was bigger than ever. The audience was bigger, it was just growing larger and larger every day, the show was getting more notoriety, and season 2 saw Gravity Falls get even darker. Real blood, actual tension between the characters, dark moments. Not only was it doing everything outside of the show to make it special, but it was also acing the whole being a show part. We saw redemption arcs of bad characters like Pacifica. We got episodes like Not What He Seems, which is literally a masterpiece, magnum opus of television. You cannot convince me otherwise. Don't bring your bad opinions in here. Gravity Falls was constantly finding ways to keep things interesting and to keep fans on the edge of their seat. Maybe we did have to wait months between episodes, but when they came out, they were entire events. You got the popcorn out. I don't know any other show before or since that has been able to pull off something like that. But even though everything was going perfect for the show, behind the scenes, things weren't so great. It turns out running a show, working on every episode, writing whole episodes, and voice acting along every other thing that comes with being a showrunner is pretty stressful. Alex was having a hard time. By the end of season 1, he wanted to quit Gravity. He couldn't handle it anymore. Those long nights sleeping in the office, all of the work he had to do, everything he had to juggle. Because he had put so much passion into the show, in turn, it was taking a huge toll on him, his mental health, and his actual health. You're just not meant to overwork yourself like that. But Alex was was determined to give the show an ending. That's why we got season 2. It is why season 2 was the last season, but I don't care that it was only 2 seasons. Gravity Falls set out to tell a story, and it told its story. It even got a giant 4-part finale, Weirdmageddon, which is honestly just a movie. It was this grandiose send-off to the entire show, and it was perfect. It ended on its own terms, it ended when the story was over, and it put a period on one of the greatest shows of all time. Because after Gravity Falls' spectacular ending, Alex had one more send-off for the show. And if this is not a testament to how incredible he is as a creator, I don't know what is. After Gravity Falls ended, Alex organized one last mystery, this time in our world. This was a giant scavenger hunt, one that I had never seen before or since. Completely orchestrated by Alex with the help of others, this hunt involved real-world clues placed all across the country, all across the globe. A puzzle that had to be solved by fans, clues and riddles and codes. The internet came together to solve one last Gravity Falls mystery, the whole thing ending in a giant Bill Cipher statue planted in the woods. The statue actually had been moved since there's some drama with it. I don't know what permission he got to place it where. But the point is, Weirdmageddon was the end to Gravity Falls the show. The scavenger hunt was the end to Gravity Falls the experience. And it was an experience. It was a long and winding road, but when it finally came to a close, Gravity Falls had become something unlike anything anyone else had seen or experienced. But what came after? Since Gravity Falls only ended a few years ago, it's harder to pinpoint its legacy, though I think we're starting to see the very beginning of it. Alex took some years off, which rightly so he should have, but now he's over at Netflix, developing another adult cartoon, which honestly we all want to see him make. I'm excited to see what happens there, and I'm excited he's still creating. After the show ended, we were treated to some more Gravity Falls magic in the form of the long-awaited release of Journal 3, which was actually a book. This was like a New York Times bestseller. It did so great because fans have been waiting for so long. It was so validating to finally get. Alex even fought for a super special edition that had like the blue light ink. They only made so many. As with a lot of cartoons, Gravity Falls got some comics. There might even be some more one day. I don't really know. But what's really special right now is seeing what the Gravity Falls alumni are doing. The industry kind of works like you work on a show, and then if you're good enough and the network sees you, you can pitch and hopefully have your own show one day. That's exactly what we saw with Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls alumni Dana Terrace went on to make The Owl House, which is an incredible show. It's currently airing and deserves all the support that it could get because honestly, like I said, it's an incredible show. Alex actually voices one of the main characters. Like, that's how great it is. Matt Braley, another legend on Gravity Falls, went on to make Amphibia, which is another incredible cartoon currently airing on Disney. Both of these shows have the Gravity Falls magic, the charm, because these people were a huge part of it. That being said, they still stand alone as their own works, and they're two of my favorite shows currently airing on TV right now. I'm just glad to see this style of television is being kept alive. Not to mention other massive Disney hits like Big City Greens. And all of these shows combine elements of Gravity Falls. I mean, Owl House is starting to use hidden codes, and all of these shows just undeniably embody elements of Gravity Falls' art and humor. On top of that, Chaya Takuchi, another Gravity Falls alumni, has her own Netflix show coming out called Inside Job. That should be great. Sounds like an adult Gravity Falls. I'm really excited. And in the end, all we're really left with is two of the best seasons of television of all time. Gravity Falls transcended what it meant to be a cartoon. It was an experience that people took a part in. It was a game that everyone could play. It was a community that people found support and love in, and there will never be anything like it again. And guys, that's how Gravity Falls changed everything.
Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Retro Nemo, and guys, we have some Gravity Falls news for you today. There's a lot of speculation going around that there could be a new Gravity Falls project, you guys. There could be some new Gravity Falls stuff coming out. I am beyond excited, so without further ado, let's just go into it. So ever since Gravity Falls ended 2 years ago, there's been a lot of merchandise and stuff around the show to come out, whether it be Journal 3 the Deluxe Edition, the complete series on DVD, or even the newly released Gravity Falls Lost Legend book. Gravity Falls has been non-stop on that merch game, and they have been crushing it. All of these items were like New York Times bestsellers, they were extremely profitable, and ultimately just wins for Disney, which allowed them to make more of these post-show projects. I don't think Lost Legends would have happened if Journal 3 wasn't so successful. And continuing on with this trend, it looks like we might get another project. The question is though, what could it be? First of all, guys, there's a bunch of clues with the cryptogram, and I'm talking specifically the cryptograms in Gravity Falls Lost Legends. Gravity Falls Lost Legends was a graphic novel compilation book featuring 4 new original Gravity Falls stories penned by Alex Hirsch himself. The book was incredible, and in typical Gravity Falls fashion, it was filled to the brim with cryptograms. Now, some of the ciphers in this book are simple little fun ones, like welcome back at the very front, but some seem to allude to something more. The ones that stand out to me are the ones that read Dipclones plot revenge, Wendy's mom in another dimension, age paradox, time travel connection, extra secrets big and little if you want to crack the riddle, Cipher lives, and Bill lives. So at face value, just on their own, these are super enticing in terms of the mystery of of the show. I mean, messages like Bill lives, Cipher lives. Is this serious? Does that mean Bill's not really dead like we thought? On top of that, there was allusions to Wendy's mother maybe being in another dimension, and the Dipper clones coming back. All of these clues are loose ends. They don't really make sense, and they seem to be foreshadowing something to come. Now to our final piece of evidence coming from the Mystery of Gravity Falls' Twitter. As you all know, the Mystery of Gravity Falls is a great fan account who is also very close to Alex Hirsch and has a lot of inside knowledge on the show, so you know what he says is true. And recently he tweeted a picture of the Bill Cipher statue in the grass, and the tweet said, "Bill's been outside ever since the title for Lost Legends was announced. He can't come back until the blank is announced." Guys, do you know what this means? This is actual proof that something is coming. They're going to announce something else. The problem is we just don't know what that thing is. Now he uses 7 asterisks for the blank, and knowing Gravity Falls, nothing is done unintentionally. I truly believe that whatever that word is, it's a 7-letter word. And I decided to look up some 7-letter words that could maybe be what this is alluding to, if it's actually the amount of letters that he's trying to say. I mean, this could be a reach. But some 7-letter words that it could be are spin-off, art book, journal, and reboot if you count the little dash as a letter. There's also garbage, volcano, snowman, and Ireland, but I don't really think those words are gonna really have anything to do with the show. So yeah, guys, first of all, most excitingly, this could be a spin-off somehow. Maybe not a full-fledged TV show, but some sort of spin-off on the series. It would be interesting to theorize about what a possible Gravity Falls spin-off could be. We could start off with the obvious answer. We could do a spin-off on Stan and Ford's adventures. Now, as we all know, the end of the series saw the two of them together on the Stan Award 2, finally living out the adventurous lifestyle they all dreamed of. And it would be incredibly interesting to see just the two of them interact and their dynamic as they go on adventures on their own. But I really don't think this would be that fulfilling of a spin-off. One, because most of the major Gravity Falls characters wouldn't be involved if it was just about the Stan twins. And also, they're not going to be in Gravity Falls anymore. They're just going to be sailing around everywhere. So I don't even think that would be the best option to go for a spin-off. This possible spin-off could focus on the town of Gravity Falls as a whole. There's so much of this town that we have not seen yet. There's so many mysteries, so many people, so many creatures we haven't met. Regardless of Dipper and Mabel, it would still be amazing to see, like, sort of like maybe a Gravity Falls anthology series, where every episode is a different antagonist and it all takes place in this town. That would just be like the best. Another possible spin-off is one of the ciphers that we talked about previously, Wendy's mom is in another dimension ? We could have a spin-off focusing on Wendy's family, and probably possibly her mother. I know Alex Hirsch said before he'd love to focus more on Wendy's character, and honestly I'd love to see more on Wendy's character, especially if we're exploring her family. That would just be really great. Again, I'm not sure if they will have a spin-off, but these could be some of the possibilities. Personally, I'd want a Toby the Determined spin-off because that alone would just be incredible, but that's just me. It could also be, and this is what I think is the most likely, an art book. Gravity Falls has been acing it with their books, and like I said before, they're all New York Times bestsellers, they're all doing really great profit-wise, and they're all really great books, so it would make sense for them to just do another book. And we haven't really gotten an art book yet, so this would be our first. Then guys, there's the journal option. Now this one is slightly plausible. I mean, there's 3 journals, and they only released the 3rd one, but I don't really see a point of them releasing a 2 or 1 journal. Most of it was covered in journal 3, there was a story with the author, and then if they released 2, they would have to release 1 after, and it would just be too much. And then the last one is reboot with the dash, which guys, I don't think this is true at all. They're not gonna reboot the series. If they do, I would gladly call myself completely wrong, but I don't think they're ever gonna bring it back. Hirsch is onto other things. Reboot doesn't even really spell 7 unless there's a dash. This one's definitely a reach, but it's always a possibility. You never know with Gravity Falls. I guess at the end of the day, undeniably, there is new Gravity Falls stuff coming, and I am more than excited to see what it is.
Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Oshrik Vox, and now that Steven Universe has wrapped its story up, everyone's going to be searching for the next big cartoon. And while I properly want to discuss the topic of what that show could be, I think a lot of people have already turned to the Owl House. Come on, visually, it's a blend between the 2010s Bean style and anime. There's already tons of lore and world building, the characters are already finding their footing, and one of my favorite aspects of the show comes in the minor details, with Easter eggs that connected to another beloved Disney property, Gravity Falls. We already done a few videos on this, how Ida the Owl Lady is actually the ex-wife of Stan Pines, or Ida's wanted poster and Albert appearing in Lost Legends, and the interesting prospect of Bill Cipher existing within the Owl House. Now, my very first theory on these two shows being connected was actually dealing with Bill and how the Owl House could potentially use him as a character down the road. However, now that we're halfway through the first season, I'm starting to consider that Bill Cipher won't be making his cameo in the Owl House because he's already one of the lead characters, King. That this cute, cuddly demon, who claims to be the king of demons, or at least was regarded in that status, but now spends his days being coddled and treated like an infant. Something that we know bothers him. But does it bother him because of who he used to be in his past life? Well, let's look at the Easter eggs and clues, because I do believe there are some there. And by the end of this video, you'll wonder, why didn't I see it sooner? Post-production Kevin here. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say, hey, I know I do a lot of theory videos, and cartoon theories have really evolved over the years where they're kind of meant to stand as their own serious thing, and you better make sure you have no holes in them. I just want to let you guys know I'm not presenting this theory with the anticipation of the Owl House is going to get to this any moment now, or this is the big thing they're building up. It's just a fun cartoon theory. We're here to have fun, alright? Alright. Of course, spoiler warning. In case my wacky out of this world theory actually comes to fruition, and you don't want to know a single peep alongside general Owl House spoilers, please click off now. With all that said, let's dive in. Now, the best place to start would be to examine the personalities and behaviors of these two characters. Starting with Bill, and look, the dude's a fucking nut job. He's also pretty clever and cunning. With infinite knowledge and the ability to traverse the mindscape, it makes sense that he's able to get whatever he wants. But we also know that Bill is obnoxious. He loves playing everything for a joke, messing with people's heads, and loves being a show-off, especially when dangling the answer to a mystery over someone's head. He's an absolute agent of chaos, and while he always breaks the rules, he really only buckles down and gets serious whenever he's angered and unable to get his way. King, on the other hand, shares a lot of these traits, but is far from pure evil. He's a lot more rational than Bill, but that really isn't saying much. Hey again, post-production Kevin here. As I begin to describe King's own traits, let me just get the obvious first one out of the way. King isn't a narcissistic sociopath and actually has basic emotions. I just figured people would want that out of the way first before storming to the comments and saying, well, the first thing about King is that he isn't a monster. I mean, he is a demon, but you know what I mean. Anyways, back to the video. King is just as loud and obnoxious. He loves asserting dominance over others whenever possible. It doesn't even need to be a living thing. He can be mischievous and a jokester, much like a triangle we know. But his biggest problem is a lack of physical intimidation. King is essentially treated like a kid because of his size and demeanor. He's cute and tiny. How could you not want to give him a big ol' hug against his will? It's hard for anyone to see him as more than just, well, a cute little sidekick, which is obviously a far cry from Bill's status. However, King shares one trait that I just find to be too, in our face, and that is his voice, his laugh, his mannerisms.
Wait, name's Bill, but you can call me your new lord and master for all of eternity.
Greetings! Bow before your king of humans!
Whereas King lacks all the chaotic evil intentions, he still carries Bill's chaotic energy. Yeah, they're both voiced by Alex Hirsch, but Hirsch has range. Yet he pretty much gave King the exact same voice as Bill, the exact same laugh as Bill. Like seriously, let me put Bill's voice effect over King and tell me you just don't hear Cipher.
And if the rain doesn't get you, the snaggleback will. They wander the rains, feeding on boiled tourists.
But I get it. A voice actor using one of their voices for a different character isn't confirmation that they're the same person. However, I do have much more compelling evidence. As you're probably wondering, how could Bill even resurface as this weird Digimon cat demon? Well, I got one word for you. Reincarnation. Back in Weirdmageddon 3, in Bill Cipher's final moments, he calls upon the force of the Axolotl, a deity in the Gravity Falls universe whose power and authority surpasses even the likes of Time Baby, who exists in the time and space between time and space. His words, not mine. Bill's plea to the Axolotl being, "My time has come to burn. I invoke the ancient power that I may return." Later on in the Choose Your Own Adventure book, Gravity Falls, Dipper and Mabel and the Curse of the Time Pirate's Treasure, which features in Alex Hirsch's own words, one big canon secret, Dipper and Mabel encounter the Axolotl, and when Dipper requests his knowledge for Bill Cipher, the Axolotl recites a poem, 60 degrees that comes in threes, watches from within birch trees, saw his own dimension burn, misses home and can't return, says he's happy, he's a liar, blame the arson for the fire. If he wants to shirk the blame, he'll have to invoke my name. One way to absolve his crime. A different form, a different time. This conveys that Bill actually does miss his home dimension, which he informs Sanford in Weirdmageddon 3 that he liberated by incinerating it to its last molecule. This seems to be Bill Cipher's biggest crime in the eyes of the Axolotl, and in order to seek redemption, he has to take a different form in a different period. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think we know what that different form could be. Not to mention, Gravity Falls canonically took place in 2012. We don't really know when the Owl House takes place, but it could very well be in present day 2019-2020. Regardless, this could be the different time. Bill Cipher's new form being stripped of power, shrunk down to a tangible physical form that cannot be altered, putting Bill in the position where he gets a taste of his own medicine, where he's the one constantly picked on and underestimated. Also, Bill, King, 4-letter names. King may not have been the actual king of demons. After all, Luce's adventure in the first episode to recover his crown, only for it to be a fast food paper crown. I think his origin story was kind of BS. But it's BS because King may still have his Bill Cipher memories, but they're just reduced to more of feelings. He can feel that he used to have more power, that he used to lead the demons of the nightmare realm. And when it comes to Bill's infinite knowledge, King has extensive knowledge on demons, amassing his own private record of demons. It could very well be possible that this was influenced by King's limitless knowledge in his previous life as Bill, on top of irony in relation to Dipper Pines, whom we know dabbled in books himself. Essentially, Bill's cry towards the Axolotl was heard, but to atone for his sins, he was given a life without true power. A life where his mischievous tendencies and obnoxious behavior remained intact, but in lacking authority and power, he just comes across as childish, unable to be taken seriously. But he also could have been reincarnated with some good in him. Again, King's not a villain. This could be Bill's journey into a not so horrible person. New life, new identity, new start, with only feelings of the past. We're not really sure how old King is, or when he came into contact with Vita, something that could come in handy should they actually ever want to break out this Disney Multiverse card. And one last thing I want to mention, I feel as if Bipper and Sock Opera gave us a good example of how Bill Cipher would have been reincarnated as a human and how some of that could have translated to King. In Dipper's body, Bill was partial to trying food, but really went for the sugary consumption, much like King's love for food. And Bipper, due to Dipper's body having a lack of sleep, was easily fatigued and passed out during his confrontation with Mabel. I think it's also evident that Bill has so much energy that an actual body can't really handle it. And King is someone who's shown with an affinity for naps. He gets tuckered out pretty easily because, again, he has a lot of energy, but not much to back that energy up. Ultimately, could this adorable critter actually be the reincarnation of a triangular sociopath bent on universal domination? I'd like to believe so, but maybe that's because it's my only way of coping with the fact that Bill Cipher's voice is coming out of this character's mouth, but Gravity Falls will never return. Potential. Potential is a word that's become kinda dicey when applied to media. In the perfect world, every TV show, video game, and movie would strike gold, knocking their premise out of the park and delivering a satisfying experience all the way through. But unfortunately, potential often gets conflated with expectations. So for better or worse, the conversation around the potential of a series nowadays often leads towards, this is what should have happened. This is what I wanted to happen. But behind the scenes, within the production, potential isn't just, what can we do with the bigger picture, but simply, at least with television, what can we do on an episode-to-episode basis? It's not just about ensuring that all of the pieces fall into place, but rather, doing your best to tell one self-contained story and tying it in with that bigger picture. Not being afraid to drop a really good idea if it benefits the show overall. And a really good example of all of this is the iconic Gravity Falls. With only 2 seasons comprising of 40 episodes, there was only so much of the summer vacation that could be told, and a lot ended up on the cutting room floor. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. Recently, the director of the upcoming Netflix animated film, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and former creative director of Gravity Falls, Michael Ryanda, uncovered a big box of mystery, full of memories, secrets, and cut content from his time on Gravity Falls. From a shocking alternate season 2 opener, featuring the likes of future Dipper coughing up blood, to an alternate ending of Blendon's game, we're going to run through it all. the lost episodes of Gravity Falls. And if you want to stay up to date with all the Gravity Falls content that we're making, on a level you won't find anywhere else, please be sure to throw this video a like and subscribe to the Roundtable alongside hitting that bell, so you can get every video personally delivered to you through YouTube notifications. With all that said, let's dive in. Let's start with that alternate and explosive Season 2 opener, which would have painted a completely different picture for the second season. Open on the forest. A butterfly flies on a toadstool in a pool of golden sunlight. Someone runs by and leaves behind a footprint and some drops of blood. There's a figure running through the forest, panting, track with their feet, leaving a trail of blood behind it. There is a POV shot of the figure emerging out of the forest to reach the mystery shack, where Dipper and Mabel are playing outside. Mabel looks freaked out at the figure off camera. Dipper, look! Dipper looks and gasps. The figure is a bleeding, fucked up looking future Dipper. He coughs up some blood. Present Dipper starts asking questions. But future Dipper says, there's no time, listen to me. In the future, Mabel's dead, everyone gets serious. And it's because I made a mistake. Take this, it's a page of code, and never tell Mabel what it says. This is how she dies. Do whatever you can to prevent it, and never show it to her. Present Dipper starts asking questions. Future Dipper responds, there's so many other things to tell you. The most important thing is, no, I need more time. Future Dipper's watch goes off and he disappears. Present Dipper and Mabel stand in total shock. They look at each other. Title sequence. Whoa! That would have been killer. No pun intended, Mabel. And it makes me wonder if Mabel being in some sort of imminent danger ultimately paved the way for what would become Weirdmageddon, with Mabel setting off the apocalypse and becoming Bill's captive within Mabelland. Ugh, this would have been so good! So why didn't it happen? Simple. They couldn't make it work. According to Michael Rianda, this is true. It didn't work. It was a cool opening that got us hyped without an ending that didn't really fit with the rest of the season. Writing is a boom and bust cycle of hype and disappointment and more hype. To which Alex Hirsch follows up, yeah, beginnings are easier to write than endings, but beginnings and endings are quantum entangled. If one part doesn't work, then neither do. A writer's mind is haunted with the ghosts of countless unrealized story branches. For more writing about the process, see The Shining. Oh, Hirsch, you little stinker. Something that I find cool though is that, ultimately, the edge and grittiness of this concept is still reflected in the tone of Gravity Falls' second season. I mean, look how much crazy shit they got away with in this sophomore outing. A gruesome battle with an army of zombies, possessed, bleeding animal heads, faces being turned inside out, and pretty much everything else horrific that came in Weirdmageddon. Though this never came to pass, from an outsider's perspective, I feel like this writing exercise did a lot in informing what Gravity Falls' second season would become. Next up is a Lost Gravity Falls Superpowers episode. Soos makes a homemade comic where he, Dipper, Stan, Mabel, and Wendy are a super team. They have bizarre Soos-invented powers, Dipper being Salad Boy. Straight from the outline itself, we start at Act 1. Wendy has to grab something out of Soos's break room when she finds something that she's giddy about. She bounds into the gift shop to show Dipper, Mabel, and Stan. It's a Soos-drawn comic on line paper that's sort of like Axe Cop, with Soos as Axe Laser Super Cop Mantis, who has an axe for an arm, a gun for an arm, and is also sort of a praying mantis or something. He has also given Dipper, Mabel, Stan, and Wendy powers, and made them into the super team called the Mystery Chums. They're eating it up, and then Soos catches them reading these and is embarrassed. Soos mentions that he's considered developing it into an animated series. Cut away to Mystery Chums, the animated series. Soos reveals he drew them because he feels like he hasn't accomplished anything in his life, and it's the type of stuff he wants to do. Be a hero and stuff. Then, for some reason, the comics burn up, like with lightning or something. Or like Soos burns them because he's embarrassed or something. Regardless, the comics burn and the fumes from the comics gets into everyone's lungs, and they all wake up the next morning with the powers and outfits that Soos had designed. Since Soos drew the costumes, there are some weird drawing cheats that are rendered in 3D, and they're all bizarre and stuff because of it. Stan and Dipper are horrified because Soos gave them bizarrely horrible power. Like Dipper's made out of salad or something. Salad Boy. Dipper says, "Why did you make me a salad boy? I love salad. I use like a ton of ranch." There is mutual understanding. Stan just has enormous hands because of this. He now needs to deal with the safety inspector and hide the fact that his hands are as big as his torso. Well, great! Anyway, his rogues gallery of ridiculous monsters also come to life. Super Eraser Shaving Man, Rotary Telephone Face, etc. They come to life and look threatening. Act 2. Everyone, for the most part, is pumped about having superpowers. Mabel and Soos, after having read a lot of comic books and seen a lot of movies, know that with great power comes great responsibility. They have an act of attempting to do good deeds and get stumped down by how hard it is to do good deeds, and how everyone is freaked out by Salad Boy. Soos reaches a low point, he calls it quits, disappointed that even with Axe Laser Super Cop Mantis powers, he still can't accomplish anything. So he sulks. While he sulks, Stan, Mabel, Wendy, and Dipper get captured by the League of Bad Guys. Act 3. Soos finds out the twins are in danger. He has to at least try to save them. He goes off. Stan, meanwhile, is trying to hide his ginormous hands from the health inspector. And eventually, when the health inspector is blankety? Yeah, considering this is an unfinished episode, I'm just assuming this plotline didn't get finished. Soos is about to save them, but is then zapped with the D-Power Zapper thing. With no powers, he keeps trying, and eventually beats the bad guys, through either his creativity, his fisting abilities, or whatever. But with no powers, he realizes that he doesn't need superpowers to accomplish things. He can do it just with his own grubby mitts. Starts helping people on a smaller scale, just as himself. Now, according to Rianda, the episodes need to have great magic and a great character story to work, and this felt a little thin, plus he left the show before he had the chance to flesh it out. But I noticed a lot of stuff in here ultimately made it into the series. I mean, the concept of comics and powers alone made it into Gravity Falls Lost Legends, with one of the stories focusing on this retooled concept. Soos feeling like he hasn't accomplished anything in his life would end up being explored in Soos and the Real Girl. And his desire to help others ultimately made its way into the Weirdmageddon story arc.
I've been wandering the plains like a desperado, helping strangers. I guess there's some folk songs about me now?
And considering they all got their powers from inhaling comic smoke, the 420 memes of this episode would have been exquisite.
That's it. You're getting it.
There was a lost creepypasta episode that involved horror movies and literally going to the morgue to visit Toby Determined's corpse. Be warned, this outline is sloppy and full of curse words. Good thing I love cursing. Cold open. The family's at a movie theater watching a stupid horror movie. Dipper and Stan are making fun of the previews together. Shitty movie trailer parodies. Pitch Pixar parody, Stag Beetle movie, Going Stag, about a stag beetle that wants to play in the human NBA. Stag Beetle Dad, you'll play stag ball like the rest of us. I'm not like you, Dad. I want to join the human NBA like Tracy McGrady. Guest starring Tracy McGrady. This is insane. We also need full CG to animate it. Then they see the horror movie and it's legitimately terrifying. Everyone leaves once they think it's over. Some minor characters stay to watch the credits. There's a post-credits scene and they see on screen a horrifying Ryeth with glowing red eyes that watches you from in the screen. It's The Watcher, and it's scary as shit. Not Disney Channel scary, like the Shining Dog costume scary. He looks terrified and looks at his hands, and there are 5 hash marks burned into it. The Watcher says, "You have 5 days." Ominous sting. Act 1. They all are excited about horror movies. They try to make one themselves. The first act is a fun montage of all the characters having fun making the film. Waddles has googly eyes glued all over his body as their friendly alien sidekick, Gleep Glop. Anyway, Mabel wants it to be a comedy, and Dipper wants it to be serious and scary. Soos is pushing for a shot-for-shot remake of the 1983 classic Santa Claus Goes to Venus. Wendy keeps pushing for a scene where people are projectile vomiting. They are all having fun. You establish Dipper refusing to put the camera down and interacting with life. He is just documenting. He needs control too bad. In the background, we cut to Toby from the cold open, and each day that passes, one of the hash marks disappears. Until finally, it gets down to 1, and then 0, and when it reaches 0, he drops dead. Like for real. People call the cops and pick up his body and stuff. Toby is legit dunzo. Then the kids, Soos, and Wendy are watching their homemade horror movie and laughing and eating popcorn. Then they see the Watcher in their own movie. It's terrifying. They're all freaked out and like, what was that? Then they look at their hands and they have the hash marks on their palms. They're next. Again, I feel like the gritty tone of these outlines is still reflected in the second season. But man, do I wish I saw an episode that scared the shit out of me like this one. You know what I also would have loved? A Wendy episode. According to Michael Rienda, we were always trying to crack a Wendy episode. This was my favorite. I love the teenage feeling of wanderlust and getting excited about reading On the Road. I love the backstory and flaw. It didn't work, but I always liked it. Code open. A woman answers a phone at like a Walmart-type superstore place. Wendy's on the other end with Dipper and Mabel. She has to be transferred to extension 234. Extension 234 connects them to the store's loudspeaker. Wendy starts making joke announcements over the loudspeaker. Clean up to aisle 6. Customers seem to be projectile vomiting all over each other. Mabel and Dipper are laughing hysterically. The woman can't hang up on Wendy, so she calls the cops. Wendy's still going. Soos asks if she could get in trouble for it. Wendy brushes him off. Then the cops show up. Stan sees Wendy and swells with pride. She has been learning from me. I'm so proud. Act 1. Open on Manly Dan. By his age, it must be the past. He teaches his boys to chop wood and they're all struggling. A huge tree drops in the distance. When the dust clears, it's little Wendy. He tells her to climb abroad his shoulders. My little ex-child. They happily gallop off. They love each other. It's very sweet. Cut to present day. A confrontational Manly Dan is bailing Wendy out for getting in trouble for the prank phone call. He tells her not to be impulsive and do the first thing that pops in her head. Wendy insists Manly Dan is the most impulsive person she knows. Besides, the cops let her off with a warning. She brushes it off by saying she has to go to work. B story, not sure what. Wendy's reading On the Road at Work. She's getting progressively more pumped about this book. Mabel asks what it's about. She explains it all and the kids are pumped. They're swept up in this romanticized teenage vision of hitchhiking on the open road. Stan has to leave for some secret portal reason, and Wendy's like, let's do this right now. Secretly, she doesn't want to go home and deal with her dad. Let's do it. Let's just hitchhike, leave town, start a new life, like Jack Kerouac. Mabel is enamored. Soos is wary of leaving the shop at first, but Wendy talks them into it. A couple of her friends come. Lee, Nate, Thompson, and Tambry. We get on the road and are immediately having fun. Things are looking up. Soos is worried. Wendy, easy Soos, we're in Oregon. It's just going to be a bunch of nice hippies. Cut to a terrifying, crazy red-eyed driver without a face driving towards them. Break. Act 2. Wendy and Co are having fun just like you should on a road trip / vagabond adventure. They're stopping at mini-marts and getting lame snow globes and making fun of them. Things are looking good. It's like a road movie. They all relate to each other about problems with their parents. Wendy doesn't say much, but she has a flashback to her and her dad drifting away. Stan B's story, back to the A-plot, the scary faceless driver comes by and offers them a ride. They can't see his ghoulish faceless self. Wendy immediately says yes before anyone can decide. People are like, I don't want to go hitchhiking. Wendy says, it'll be fine, come on. This is the adventure of our lives. People in those stories never said, no, I'm scared. She makes them all go in. It's creepy and tense in the car. Eventually, the guy reveals himself to be a horrifying ghoul face and locks the doors. They all go screaming into the distance. Act 3. He takes him to the end of the road diner. Or, he hang a lampshade on it and have it be Bob's Big Boy, but with a David Lynch head on the outside. There are other people that get taken there and stay forever, and are sort of these lost souls that are stuck there, from all different eras. It's like this terrifying Lynchian dark version of an idyllic road trip stop. It's basically a Lynch parody fest with Soos and Mabel. Like these little creepy odd couples are walking in fast motion out of a wall, and Soos is pushing them back in. What are you doing, Grandma and Grandpa? Get back in that mouse hole, you goofs. Anyway, everyone wants them to have the special, and after you eat the special, you stay there forever. Wendy's really guilty that this is all her fault. Wendy wants to impulsively react, but remembers her dad. She thinks carefully what to do and comes up with a plan, and chops down a tree on the river. They all come home, relieved to be back in Gravity Falls, and her dad is chopping wood in the back. He's still mad at Wendy. Hey, Dad? Ugh, can I chop some wood with you? Manly Dan just nods and waves her off. They fell the tree. Haha, that's my little ex-child. Wendy smiles and keeps chopping. Something like that. Obviously, a lot of variables need to be figured out, but I love the teenage feeling of this and love that it gives Wendy a story and a flaw. Still needs to work to make her better, but it's a start. The reason it didn't work, according to Michael, is that the magic was too vague and didn't really make sense. The magic was best when it mirrored the character story, like in Double Dipper. Multi-Dippers is a visual metaphor for overthinking, which is Dipper's character story. It's hard to pull off, though. And last but not least, we have an alternate ending to Blendon's game, where instead of an infinite slice of pizza, Soos gets a glimpse of the future, where he witnesses a bonding moment between himself and his son. Time, baby. Remember, time heals all wounds. Interior, laser tag day. People are running past Soos shooting laser guns. Soos is watching, the kids are laughing. He musters a small fake smile and then looks at the exit sign. He begins walking towards the exit sign. All of a sudden, time slows down. The kids are flipping their coin. It freezes midair. Soos. Huh, that's unconventional. Pow! A flash of green light. The kids appear behind Soos. We're sorry we left you hanging, dude.
We got sucked into this time battle, Globnar, which I know sounds insane, whatever, but we won, and in the process, we found out why you've been sad all this time.
And I think we found a way to fix it. The kids present a glowing orb. Well, I have always wanted a glowing holographic power orb, but I don't think this is gonna help much.
No, Soos, look into it.
Soos looks into the orb and sees a guy who looks like an older version of Soos. He's still wearing the hat, but he's a little gray around the temples. He has a mustache. What? It looks like me and my dad, but I don't remember any of this stuff.
But doesn't that guy look like a good dad?
Yeah, I wish my dad was more like that. Home movie footage. The older Soos type and a kid Mabel and Dipper's age are doing a funny dance together. The baby is laughing. Future Soos starts laughing.
Well, that's because that's you in the future of your son.
Seriously? Yeah, you're such an awesome dude that when you said you didn't want to be like your dad, you meant it. Home movie montage. Soos paints flames on the side of his son's crib. Soos puts LED display shades on his baby that says, Baller Baby. Soos and his son playing laser tag together. They both have shirts that say, Ramirez Family Laser Warriors. Soos playing heavy metal for his son, and they're both headbanging and wearing question mark shirts. Soos' son skins his knee and is crying. Soos starts dancing. How can you cry when your dad's doing the robot? Soos play tackles his son. He's back! Ernesto's back! Shows Soos' son's birthday, and it's like this over-the-top extravagant thing, with a disco ball and a laser light show.
And we checked. You never missed a single one of Ernesto's birthdays.
Shows Soos celebrating after his son blows out the candles, and his son gives him a big smile.
Look at you. You're so awesome around us. No wonder you're an awesome dad.
Thanks, guys. You know you're planning to give me the best birthday ever. You just nailed it. This is like the nicest thing anybody's done for me.
Hey, you did it yourself.
Soos wipes away a tear.
Laser tag closes in 1 hour. There's still time. You want to play some laser tag?
Totally.
Yeah!
Awesome. They look back. Soos, you coming? Soos has his back turned to the kids. Soos looks at the postcard, he nods to himself, and he tosses it in the trash. This came about because there were tons of debates around how to end Blendon's game. They wanted Soos to have a win, without it feeling cheap. This script being based on an outline pitch by Jeff Rowe. And folks, there you have it. These are some of the most insane revelations that's come out of this Gravity Falls Twitter thread, and I really hope we get more. Like, what the hell was up with that Zodiac? Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Fox, and when it comes to Gravity Falls, something that was always intriguing to me is the Bill Cipher Zodiac. This wheel is a prophecy that was present in the series since the very beginning, popping up at the very end of the theme song, and properly appearing within the series 3 times. Dreamscapers, the Centurion Candidate, and of course the series finale, Weirdmageddon 3, Take Back the Falls. However, despite the build-up to the Zodiac's role in the story, its small spotlight was cut short before we even got the chance to see what it would do. To the point where 3 years later, we listed in our top 10 WTF card disappointments. Check that out if you haven't. And now making an entire video on it, because there's a lot of Gravity Falls topics that I wanted to make while the show was running that I can still make now, even if the show has been long gone. Let's break down the Bill Cipher Zodiac, look even further into all the symbols on the wheel, and even provide somewhat of a concrete answer on what exactly it would have done if Stan and Ford didn't screw everything up. On today's installment of Vox Will Never Let Go of This Cartoon. Now, Ford Pines, the author of the journals, first discovered the Zodiac in the same cave he found the initial incantation to summon Bill Cipher, where he learned the natives of Gravity Falls prophesied that the symbols could create a force powerful enough to vanquish Bill Cipher back into the Nightmare Realm should he ever be released into the physical world. There's really a story to still be told here about the shaman who first summoned Bill Cipher, his own experience with the Dorito Demon, and how he was able to foresee the future, prognosticating the 10 symbols on the Zodiac and the force that they would create to vanquish Bill once and for all. I don't know, sounds like future spinoff material to me. Maybe if they make another Lost Legends, it could be about that. These 10 symbols correlate to characters found in the series. However, what I find interesting is that by the time the finale rolled around, the internet had all the characters on the Zodiac figured out, from imagery associated with them throughout the series. Ford gives a questionable explanation on the symbols, saying they don't need to all be literal. how symbols like the ice bag is representative of someone cool in the face of danger, and everybody immediately goes to Wendy. Yet we've had plenty of Wendy ice bag imagery prior. I believe if one symbol can be representative of a personality trait, then really they all are. It wasn't just that Dipper has a pine tree on his hat so he's Pine Tree, it was more of Dipper and who he is as a person always being destined for this Zodiac. Gaining the novelty from the Mystery Shack was just destiny clarifying the events to come. So let's go through these symbols, figure out what they all mean on a different level, and why the meaning of these symbols are so important to build Cipher. Starting with, the pine tree. Now I did a little bit of research, and pine trees play an important part of the beliefs and legends of many Native American and First Nations people. To many Native people, the pine tree is a symbol of wisdom and longevity. Dipper is very wise for his age, gaining more wisdom from his experience throughout the series and the journal, as well as being young, at only 12 years old, his entire life ahead of him. Longevity. The shooting star. I believe this is someone who shoots for the stars. They have high ambition, which we know Mabel is chock full of ambition. She's always embarking on crazy adventures, whipping up insane amalgamations and ideas, always doing so with a smile on her face. I mean, come on, who else would put on an entire puppet play about herself to impress a boy? A very strange, puppet-obsessed boy. The question mark. This is rather simple. I believe the question mark represents someone who's instilled with wonder. Soos not only harbors a lot of childlike wonder, but is very curious about the world around him, although not to the extent of Dipper. Alternatively, this could also refer to being elusive. The show seemed to be going into a direction where Soos could also be someone not to be trusted. You guys may remember one of the hidden phrases from an online Flash game early into Gravity Falls' run that read, "The handyman knows more than you think." It felt as if at one point, Soos could have been another big mystery in the series itself. Although it also could have been referring to Ford, Handyman, Six Fingers, author of the journal, or it could have just been a plot point forgotten about, a red herring, something to throw us off. Anyways, let's move forward to the stitched heart, which I think could represent a mended heart, or a bleeding romantic. Or if you want to look at the worst in Robbie, someone who's capable of manipulating one's heart. So yeah, this could be reflective of Robbie's heartbreak and recovery, his drive as a bleeding romantic, or it could reflect his manipulation to keep Wendy dating him for as long as she did. Although that's getting a little bit too real. But speaking of Wendy, let's look at the bag of ice. Someone who's cool in the face of danger. Yes, this is Wendy to a T. Every time in the series, whenever anything got crazy or even apocalyptic, she always remained calm. And her cool demeanor never faltered. Well, except for that one time in Society of the Blind Eye, but you know, we all have our moments. The six-fingered hand. I believe this represents abnormality. Someone or something out of the norm. Maybe even supernatural. Without a doubt, this suits Ford. Not only was he born with 6 fingers in each hand, which is abnormal, but he spent his life immersing himself in the supernatural, the paranormal. Nothing about Ford's life was ever normal, but in the best way possible. It was exciting, adventurous. Not only did he learn a lot, but he gained the resources to change the world. The crescent or Pac-Man shaped symbol thingy, you know, it changed throughout the series because of censorship and everything. I believe this represents conspiracy, having something to hide, general secrecy. Now it's to believe the symbol in the fez was actually representative of the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel, which was a conspiracy in Gravity Falls itself. A secret society that was never directly addressed in the show, but fans dug deep into throughout the years. It goes without saying this suits Stan, a man of many secrets who had the government after him for a possible conspiracy, believing that he would be responsible for the end of the world, which he was in a roundabout way. If he never activated the portal, the dimensional rift would have never been created, and Weirdmageddon could have been prevented. I say could for something we're going to tackle in a moment. But finishing up these symbols, the glasses. Someone scholarly, intelligent. Of course this has to be Old Man McGucket. As we saw throughout the series, the dude's intellect is unmatched. Even after he lost his mind, he was able to whip up some pretty impressive inventions. And once he reclaimed his sanity, he was more resourceful and hands-on than ever. The llama. Now again, I did a little bit more research for this one, but llama symbolism serves to remind someone that only through hard work and perseverance will your dreams be realized. You can adapt to any situation in which you find yourself. Therefore, know that whatever loads you are carrying right now, you will be able to manage and see them through. Alternatively, the llama meaning could also be reminding you that your biggest focus should be yourself. Thus, personal growth and your connection to spirit should be your highest priority at all times. In fact, llama symbolism is insisting that you follow your heart rather than your ego. Yeah, I believe all of this will immediately bring someone to Pacifica's development throughout the series, especially in Northwest Mansion Mystery, where she did follow her heart and put her ego aside. Pacifica had personal growth. She had to make some hard decisions for the greater good. Last but not least, the pentagram with an eyeball. Considering this is really tied to the tenet of telepathy, I believe this symbol means deceit, tricking others and putting on a false image. Someone who's generally a trickster. Yeah, up until his little moment of redemption, this was Gideon gleeful to a T. He fooled the masses with the tenet of telepathy, with his amulet that endowed him with psychic abilities, and his general manipulation of the town, putting on a false image that only a few people saw through. Wow, yeah, it's kind of hard to remember that Gideon was actually a really big dick. Now, the importance of all these symbols in relation to Bill's Cipher is that all these traits can be applied to Bill. He possesses infinite wisdom and knowledge, longevity as he's immortal. He has a lot of ambition, he's elusive, he's curious about the other worlds and species he wants to conquer. He's instilled with wonder, arguably cool in the face of danger against many adversaries, he's definitely abnormal, he is the definition of deceit, and so much more. In many ways, it's almost like a yin and yang. These 10 symbols are 10 people when combined together, allows Bill to truly meet his match. But I also believe those similarities to Bill can serve to answer another lingering question with the Zodiac. Why did Bill show the Zodiac to everyone? And as we saw from the end of Centurion Candidate, why could it be used to summon him? I believe the Zodiac had two purposes: to vanquish Cipher or to summon him. Not just in the way Gideon did, but actually allowing him to physically manifest in the real world. The Rift was just one way for Bill to manifest himself, alongside Ford's portal. But perhaps if the Zodiac was forged sooner, and all 10 people linked hands prior, Bill would have been able to manifest in the real world, and unleash Weirdmageddon much sooner. Alternatively, perhaps Bill was aiming to strike a deal with everybody on the wheel, which would have somehow led to a similar outcome. Maybe it's similar to Voldemort and his Horcruxes. Put a little piece of himself within those representative of the 10 symbols, and it would have brought about devastation to the world, as Bill would have had enough components to create a new body in a brand new dimension. Kind of like Exodia from Yu-Gi-Oh! After all, Bill struck a deal with Dipper, Ford, and Gideon, and arguably Mabel if you want to count when he possessed Blend and Blanded, tricking Mabel into giving him the Rift. It kind of was a deal, and it was kind of fulfilled with Mabel Land. In the beginning of the last Mabelcorn, Bill did say, "I've been making deals," chatting with old friends, likely referring to his interaction with Gideon at the end of the previous episode. Who knows what could have happened off screen? Maybe Bill could have tried to strike a deal with Robbie, trying to pitch Robbie a way to get Wendy back, but Robbie was more than content with Tambury. If Bill was bold enough, he definitely could have attempted to strike a deal with Stan, another con artist. He could have approached Wendy, enticing her with a deal to get along with her family, namely her father, McGucket to reclaim his sanity, and a few other examples. Bill is a very smart businessman, never doubt his abilities to literally get into your head. But I believe this brings us to the biggest question. What would have happened if the Zodiac wasn't interrupted? After the events of Weirdmageddon, Dipper wrote in the journal, "We still have no idea what would have happened if we completed the Zodiac's prophecy." Soos imagines that the Zodiac would have given us all ratness powers. Somehow I doubt this is what the ancients had in mind. However, I believe the mural in the cave showed us exactly what would have happened. Notice the figures pushing Bill through the tear in the sky, similar to the X-shaped hole in the Nightmare Realm. I believe our cast of characters would have gained control of Cipher, actual physical control, and putting their minds to the test and together would have been able to push him through the tear in the sky and seal him and his weirdness, closing out the gateways between worlds. Mind over matter. Now look, at the end of the day, we may never fully understand the Zodiac and all of its awesome abilities, the details and Easter eggs and care that went into it, the true deeper lore behind it, as there's always a story to be told and a story can always be fabricated. But that doesn't mean we can't leave it up to our imagination. Comment down below your thoughts on what the Zodiac could have done. And with my theory of Bill Cipher popping up in the Owl House, do you think we could see the birth of a new Zodiac? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Ostrich Vox, and The Owl House has certainly been one of my favorite animated series to watch on a weekly basis since its premiere. Seriously, I get why Disney was hyping this series up. I'm having a blast, and in many aspects, it does give off the vibe that it's a spiritual successor to the likes of other Disney animated series, such as Gravity Falls, and even a little bit of Star vs. the Forces of Evil. But of course, it's that Gravity Falls connection people want to really hone in on. We all love Gravity Falls, and we know that it'll rock on forever in popularity. So of course, when Gravity Falls alumni go on and make their own shows, fans are going to hold them to similar expectations. But obviously you could argue that The Owl House is a little bit closer to Gravity Falls than the rest. And for good reason. Both series have been able to reference one another, with Gravity Falls having it be a little bit more retroactive. Now I already broke down the Owl House Easter eggs in the Gravity Falls graphic novel Lost Legends, but recently a new Easter egg began to make its rounds that could confirm a very close relationship between two of the main characters of both series. In layman's terms, the DILF of Gravity Falls could have wed the MILF of the Owl House. Stan's ex-wife, Marilyn, could actually be the Owl Lady herself, Edalyn. These two modern Disney icons could have once actually been lovers. So let's run through the evidence and speculate how this could once again lead into a potential future crossover way down the road that could even bring Gravity Falls back into the new decade. Of course, spoiler warning, if you do not want to know the Easter eggs that could lead to any potential crossovers down the road, click off now. With all that said, let's dive in. So the aforementioned Easter egg was brought to light by Instagram user in love of cartoons, whose profile definitely lives up to her name. The meat and potatoes is in her post, Ida the Owl Lady is Stan Pine's ex-wife, drawing attention to the commentary track of Gravity Falls Season 1, Episode 18, The Lamb Before Swine, which features Stan Pine himself talking in character, giving a description of his ex-wife Marilyn, which states the following. I was actually married for less than a day. Vegas situation. We reached for the same slot machine handle and it was love at first sight. Marilyn had hair like airline stewardess and a neon pink shirt that said, over 30 and very flirty. Man, I was putty in her hands. You should have seen the way she threw dice. One time right at my head. Turns out she was only married to distract me while she stole my car and all my winnings. I guess her name was fake and hair was fake, but you know, the love was real. She really was the one that got away. Like literally, it was a proper getaway. She was chased by cop cars for a mile out of Vegas before ducking out of a car and into a canyon and making off with all my loot. Sometimes I still think of her, that pale Bingo Hall skin, that one weirdly sharp tooth. Sorry, I'm getting nostalgic. Crazy hair, pale skin, one weirdly sharp tooth. Well, if I didn't know any better, I'd say Stan Potts was talking about little old Edalyn right here. The Instagram user also points out the Gravity Falls Lost Legends wanted poster for Ida, which we broke down in our video last year, but another detail she uses is concept art of Ida, with her wearing a shirt that reads 30 and flirty, which is similar to Stan's description of the pink shirt that says over 30 and very flirty. And while Ida has not worn that shirt in the show's canon, we have seen her equipped with a mug that reads 30 and flirty, so she could own an entire line of merchandise centered around this one gimmicky statement, which, knowing Ida, wouldn't surprise me. The actions of Stan's married for less than a day ex-wife also very much reads as the work of Ida, marrying Stan as one big elaborate ploy in order to scam him out of his winnings, and apparently his car. Stan also suspects that her name was fake and that her hair was fake. So if anything, Ida could have gave Stan a fake name, but didn't bother to do anything to masquerade her hair. And of course Stan's gonna believe that's not real. Stan also remarks that she was chased by a cop before ducking out of a door and into a canyon, making off with all of the loot. We know Ida could have made such a grand escape as she has a magical unfolding door that serves as a gateway between the demon realm and the mortal realm, which is of course how she would have stumbled into the living world in the first place. Now, it's important to note that the Gravity Falls box set released in summer of 2018. The commentary likely would have been recorded a few months beforehand. By this point, the Owl House would have already been put into production, and Alex Hirsch would have already been cast as King. Plus, it makes a little bit sense that he would be heavily involved in the creative process of his girlfriend's cartoon. So while Ida being Stan's ex-wife likely wasn't the plan from the very beginning of Gravity Falls, it does seem as if it's something they're improvising in now. So if they want to pull that card and break it into an actual episode, we would have had foreshadowing years in advance, and I'm sure Disney would be more than down for a Gravity Falls crossover at some point in time, and I can already see how this would go down. The show's going to eventually hit a point that they're going to address that Luce's summer camp is about to come to a close, goes, and she has to figure out if she's going to go back to Earth or still stay in the demon realm. So at some point, the show will eventually bring us back to Earth, and I wouldn't be too surprised if it could become a recurring location. So even if this doesn't happen in season 1, the door will open eventually. But even beyond that, we know Ida amasses the inventory for her stand by sending Albert into the mortal realm, stealing various objects for Ida. Perhaps an episode will come along where Ida gets tired of Albert's pools. They're not horrible, but she needs more moneymakers, so she assigns Luz to do her dirty work for her. If Ida just sets up a random portal on Earth, by coincidence, Luz would be assigned to shoplift from none other than the Mystery Shack. And after a few shenanigans and the audience having a few reunions of characters, Luz would eventually put 2 and 2 together that Stan and Ida were married for less than a day, but Stan is still recovering. Ida is still his ideal perfect match. And I mean, this in itself would be a fun premise for an episode. We can get some Ida development, maybe sparks would actually fly between her and Stan, but by the end of the episode, they'd still decide to break it off anyways. But the more I speculate, the more I start going into other territory with the Owl House and Gravity Falls, but I would love to explore even more of their crossover potential in another video. For now, let's take solace in the fact that these 2 characters are probably married. It's a retcon for sure, but what was said in this commentary track was a clear Easter egg. I don't believe it was coincidence. Hearst definitely implemented this gag with the foresight of fans coming back to this commentary track once the Owl House gets going and connecting all the dots for themselves. And if this blew your mind, definitely give props to In Love with Cartoons on Instagram for bringing this to the internet's attention, but also consider subscribing to this channel because there's definitely a lot of crossover potential within these Disney cartoons and cartoons in general that I am ready to dive in and explore.
Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Retro Nemo, and although Gravity Falls has been over for quite a long time, the conversation around the animated series never ceased to exist. Someone is finding the show for the very first time every single day, which means someone is finishing this show every single day as well, craving more content. That's where we come in. Not too long ago, we filled you guys in on what happened after Dipper and Mabel undid the Oddpocalypse. But what about all of the missing pieces? The parts of the show that wound up on the cutting room floor. You can tell from the title of this video, that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about the most important deleted scenes and scrapped episodes of Gravity Falls that deserve to see the light of day. Let's go through mainly the second season of the show and learn what could have been, alternate character moments, action scenes, and more. You're watching Tuned In. Let's start with an alternate Bill Cipher intro. A dream sequence, assumably in the episode Dreamscapers, was planned where Dipper can be seen immersed in a mysterious red light before the roof of the Mystery Shack is ripped off and sucked into a black hole. Lightning generates from this hole only for a tiny Bill Cipher to fly out. Isn't he so cute? Bill snaps his fingers, summoning his cane, and tap dances in front of Dipper for a grand entrance. Bill tips his hat, which as a result tips the environment around Dipper until Bill readjusts his hat back into place. Revealing just a portion of his knowledge to Dipper, Bill multiplies into 3 versions of himself, each with a fact about Dipper. Maybe he read his Wikipedia page. Zinger. These 3 secrets being his fear of uncertainty, his real name not being Dipper, and his crush on Wendy. After Dipper freaks out, Bill explains that he was hired by Gideon to break into Stan's mind and steal the combination to the safe that contains the deed to the shack. As Dipper voices his concerns, Bill snaps once more, transporting Dipper to midair, causing our protagonist to descend at great speeds. Bill teases to Dipper that there's a way to his defeat, but instead of tipping him off now, he challenges Dipper to figure out a way into Stan's head, which is embodied onto the grass plane as a giant stone head. Dipper's close to becoming a pancake on the ground when he wakes up from the dream. He checks his hands only to see a note from Cipher that reads, "The dream was real, and look on your other hand." Dipper looks to find Bill chew a turkey. Very classy. This infers that originally Bill was able to be a lot more tangible with the real world, or at least his host once he entered the mind of his host. Though I prefer how they did it in this show a little bit more. Next up is a deleted scene from Scarioki. The episode's storyboard pitch featured a longer alternate introduction, where prototype versions of Agent Powers, named Agent Elman originally, and Agent Trigger work in the Department of Cover-Ups, the sign of which is covered up itself to read the Department of Nothing. An alarm goes off, which they try to cover up, but their monitor reveals energy signatures from Stan's portal and tracks back to Gravity Falls. This is how the agents originally arrived in town. Act 1 of Scarioki was also different, with news reports of the aftermath of Gideon Rises, as opposed to the grand reopening of the Mystery Shack. The Pines family and the Mystery Shack employees were shown being interviewed for their thoughts on the whole Gideon situation. The idea to throw a party for the reopening was originally due to Mabel starting her own business, Crazy Mabel's Party Planning dining and cat sitting, which honestly is something Mabel probably did off screen anyways. Dipper also urged the townfolk to be alert on the next paranormal threat, warning that it's too premature to party, only to be disregarded as a crackpot. Classic Dipper. This, alongside customers at the shack treating paranormal activity as a joke, would have planted the seeds in the episode itself for Dipper to hastily work with the government agents. It still makes enough sense when he does in the show, so this wasn't really necessary, but it would have been nice extra padding for that plot point. Wendy and Soos also converse about the earthquakes. That's really Stan's portals tests, making the old man paranoid. And you know things are wrong when Stan freaks out. There was also an alternate take on Stan's reflection towards Dipper. When the zombies begin to invade, Stan is shown taking down all the signs that lead to the mystery shack and fear of the government agents. However, his conclusion is still the same, comparing Dipper to himself while staring at a literal reflection of himself in the gold plating of Journal 3. This would have led to an alternate battle with the zombies that include the golf cart exploding, piñatas being consumed, and blindfolded Toby determined, nearly hitting the zombies instead. Mabel would have also used the karaoke machine to combat the zombies and a shaken up soda can to blow off one of their heads, which is extremely dark and I love it. Another deleted scene from the episode would have featured Dipper finding a zombie survival kit, which he would open just to pull out a noose, implying the only way to survive is to kill yourself. You can see why this was cut. Now let's move on to scenes from Into the Bunker. Alternate scenes from this episode show the shapeshifter posing as the author, acting a bit more deranged yet welcoming towards Dipper and Wendy, cherishing a Pez dispenser and offering the two water, very polite. Although there's a joke that if Wendy slips up and touches the red spigoter, it'll flood the place and drown them all, so not as polite. In an alternate ending, instead of Soos recovering the laptop that reads property of F, he finds an ID for Project Polygon that belongs to Old Man McGucket, which would have likely served as a direct segue into the episode Society of the Blind Eye. There's an alternate end tag where Stan, walking out of the basement, encounters Dipper and Mabel. Two parties both lie about their author-related adventures of the night and agree to sleep until 4 in the afternoon. But what about deleted scenes in everyone's favorite mini-golf-related adventure, the Golf War? Well, originally, Pacifica's remark on how money makes problems go away would have been followed up with her throwing a pile of money on the ground, to which townfolks grab and pick at the money like chickens. It's funny, but it's also kind of true. Dipper and Mabel's discovery of the little putty-ins was originally a tad different, with these little golf people dancing, feeding a miniature cow, and just living in their society until they notice they're being monitored. From there, they asked the little putty-ins for their help. Sock Opera also had its fair share of deleted scenes. The Cold Open had a slightly different design and method of Dipper powering up the laptop, utilizing more wires and outlets. Dipper's confrontation with Bill Cipher in this episode went down a little differently as well. Bill reveals he was present for the events of Into the Bunker, impressed with how Dipper defeated the shapeshifter. Bill also claims dream magic can't hurt Dipper, creating a giant muscular arm that faces right through Dipper. In general, Bill's a lot more mobile and friendly with Dipper throughout this exchange. Once Bill possesses Dipper's body, he takes a bit more advantage of all 5 senses in the human body, putting hot sauce on cake and rubbing it on his face. Mabel's play also had different execution, inflating Mabel's ego and making her seem more independent than she actually is until her puppet meets Puppet Gabe. Sock Opera also had a different end tag, where Gabe sat in Greasy's diner by himself, taking out his guilt towards treating Mabel poorly through his puppets condemning him. This guy has issues, man. In Soos and the Real Girl, the introduction to Hoo Ha Owl's Pizza Matronic Jamboree was different, with Stan observing the indulgent nature of the venue, inspired to obtain an animatronic after Willy Badger successfully pulls a load of money from customers. We also get a few different scenes of him contemplating and scheming of stealing the animatronics for his own benefit. But what about one of the show's darkest episodes, Society of the Blind Eye? Well, aside from Stan joining in Soos' sing-along to Straight Blanchin', an incredible track I might add, the gang's infiltration into the Museum of History was altered. Originally, an elderly security guard was going to lock every conceivable entrance into the building, but cracked open a window because he didn't want it to get too drafty. His heart was in the right place, but he may want to brush up on dictionary definitions. Lazy Susan, waking up from her memory wipe, also would have seen her donate to the Society of the Blind Eye after being scammed into doing so by Blind Ivan. Another member speaks up on the morality of doing this to people, only for Ivan to wipe the minds of everyone who questions his authority. No, I take it back, this dude has issues. Not What He Seems has an incredible amount of deleted scenes. The original title was The Return of Stan, but was altered due to obvious reasons. When Agent Power and Agent Trigger confront the twins, which leads to Dipper questioning on their survival of the zombie attack, instead of Power remarking that he used Trigger as a human shield, he states that the zombie only ate part of his brain that contained a sense of humor, and that it was just a small bite. A joke in reference to Men in Black that ultimately found its way into the season 2 premiere Scarioki. Makes you wonder how far in advance these episodes were in the pipeline before airing or even hitting post-production. The agents also revealed they've been watching the Pines family in a more direct manner that addresses their cameos throughout the first half of season 2. There's also a brief joke of Stan claiming there's nothing up his sleeve once he's in custody, only for everything a magician would have to literally shoot right out of his sleeve. One of the more interesting things scrapped from Not What He Seems was an entire scene where Agent Trigger takes Dipper and Mabel to the government-owned Historical Learning Institution. This is where Trigger was going to keep Dipper and Mabel before child services could pick them up. Kerpranked with Justin Kerprank was still involved with the episode, as the program was interrupted by a news report of Stan's arrest, being viewed by Dipper and Mabel on a television in their school. Dipper gets the idea to check the security tapes of the shack to prove Stan's innocence, but Mabel points out that they're trapped. It isn't long until Dipper remembers he has the president's key and uses it to unlock the door. escaping the facility after fighting off Trigger and another agent. Trigger's speech to Dipper would have went down after Dipper and Mabel restrained the agent. This would have been a great alternative to Manly Dan attempting to straight up murder Agent Trigger and the kids, especially as it relied on a plot point many people were awaiting years to return. Ultimately, it was scrapped for time. The episode A Tale of Two Stans would have originally featured a recap of previous events leading up to Ford walking out of the portal. Stan would have also had a bloody nose after being punched by Ford. Ford originally also had a long, untamed beard when emerging from the portal, generally appearing to be more dirty and barely scraping by as opposed to the cunning survivalist he is in the final version of the episode. The removed shot of Stan and Ford adjusting the glasses at the same time would have also occurred after Mabel questioned just what the heck was going on in their current situation. Dipper's realization that Ford is the author of the journals would have also been a gradual deduction as opposed to being fed to him by Stan's final line in the previous episode. It would have been little things like him seeing Ford's 6 fingers match exactly with the 6-fingered journal. As opposed to being bullied about his 6 fingers on Glasshard Beach, Ford would have been confronted by Stanley at a different instance during this grand retelling of their past. The twins would have been in their bedroom as a young Ford held up his hand to the window. Stan would have promised Ford a life of adventure from said window as opposed to being right there on the shore. There also would have been more fun moments and banter of the twins growing up, such as watching movies and Stan creating a disturbance in class, swapping glasses with Ford in a lighthearted attempt to shift the blame. Before Stan and Ford were called into the principal's office for Ford to be offered the chance of a lifetime, initially the two were at the science fair, Ford teasing Stan over his footbot and Stan trying to grab the attention of female classmates to no avail, again highlighting both their dynamic and status as social outcasts. Stan staging his death by crashing his car was also cut. Stan actually put a dummy of himself in the driver's seat before pushing it off a cliff and crying for help. A member of the mafia would have been showed reading about Stan's death, remarking, "At least somebody got him." Dang, that's dark. What's most exciting about the deleted scenes of this episode for me is the original end tag, of which a heavily altered version of this sequence ended up as a cold open for the last Mabel corn. Ford returning to his old room introduced in the episode Carpe Diem, finding it difficult to lay down due to everything feeling all wobbly. The time on his clock began to slow down, the rainbow light of the prism melts away, the environment turns black and white, and Ford hears a familiar cackle that transitions into the sudden appearance of Bill Cipher. Bill refers to Ford as his old partner and that for a while he was trying to keep the Pines family from uniting with their lost uncle. However, Bill finds the return of Ford a much more fun alternative to him being lost in the Nightmare Realm. Bill also hints that Stan's activation of the portal can serve to Cipher's advantage. Ford remarks that Bill has no dominion in this world, but Bill retorts that things change. The room begins to set on fire as the cameras close in on Bill before Ford abruptly wakes back up, his surroundings back to where they were prior to the inception. While I do find this more intense than the cold open in the last Mabel corn, it might have been better to hold this scene off until then as a way to build anticipation and tension as opposed to giving us a scene with Bill and Ford right then and there. It also allowed us to discover Ford and Bill's relationship in a way that made Ford momentarily untrusting. Speaking of the last Mabel corn, a brief fight was cut from the episode at the last second. The scene consisted of Mabel, Candy, Grenda, and Wendy engaging in combat against the unicorns, exchanging blows and all. While this scene was fully animated, it was ultimately cut for time. Moving on to roadside attractions, the opening of the episode originally had Mabel buying goods from the ice cream truck, the ice cream man striking a strong resemblance to Blind Ivan. Mabel requests that Dipper asks 2 girls hanging out outside the shack for a nickel to pay for their ice cream, to which Dipper gets cold feet. He still tries to go for it, but bombs horribly. I can relate, Dipper, it's okay. This was the original catalyst for Dipper's flirtatious mission in the episode, before being changed to another Dipper Likes Wendy episode. Dipper's interaction with the girl in the corn maze Soos gets stranded in was more fleshed out before being reduced to a montage. The German girl in question was going around to every horrible museum in America to laugh at it. Dipper joins in on this mocking as a way to hit things off. The original end tag for the episode would have seen Soos stranded in the corn maze, etching "Help, I'm bored" into the maze. 2 helicopter pilots find him and hand him a book of maze puzzles, which he's absolutely stoked by. Dipper and Mabel versus the future. During the scene where Dipper is holding on to the alien pod keeping Ford captive, he would have passed Robbie and Tambry making out, taking a selfie before being splashed by water caused by the ship's speed. A brief scene with Stan would have saw him find a long-lost ponytail extension and be mocked by Pacifica. While this was likely cut due for time, I also like to imagine this was cut due to the backtracking of Pacifica's character development. And finally, let's take a look at Weirdmageddon Part 1. In this episode, there was a cut scene where Bill mimics and taunts Ford moments before turning him into gold. Ford would have also spat on Bill's eye, a wad of saliva that Bill would have licked off with a tongue hidden underneath the eye itself. Ugh, there's just so much wrong with that. Dipper would have had a direct interaction with Chandra Jimenez, as she interviewed Dipper on the streets of the Oddpocalypse with a rat as opposed to a microphone, showing that she has actually snapped. Mr. Poolcheck and Manly Dan also appeared hiding in a dumpster, warning Dipper to find cover as they restart society in their hideout, implying they've been feasting off cardboard. It's just dark, man. We all know Bill Cipher is a showman, but did you know he was planned to have a Weirdmageddon song titled "It's Going to Get Weird"? An entire demo for this song was recorded and even storyboarded by a fan after its online release, but was cut for time. Bill, we're all waiting on that mixtape, man. You gotta drop it. An extended scene with the Field of Weirdness bubbles was also cut after being filmed, where live-action Dipper and Wendy, played by their voice actors Jason Ritter and Lindy Cardellini, are taken aback by their new physical form. forms. Dipper would be freaking out while Wendy admires her good looks. In Weirdmageddon 2, Escape from Reality, a parody of Snarf from Thundercats would have briefly appeared, disturbing a pixie when Dipper, Wendy, and Soos arrive in Mabel Land. Xyler and Kraz actually name the colors exclusively to Mabel Land: Reddit Purple, Tubble Orange, and Awesome Marine. In these deleted scenes, Xyler and Kraz also introduced the 5 fun zones of Mabel Land: Glowstick Forest, Hunk Mountain, Sweater Town, Scrapbooktopia, and Radical Beach. Back in the Pyramid, Bill's anger at the weirdness bubbles restricting him and his henchmaniacs would have saw more of Bill's allies, and even Pacifier, originally named Demonicious, give insight into the situation. They would have explained to Bill why the weirdness bubble keeps them bound to the town. 8-Ball would have suggested that they just party harder, only for Bill to reduce him to dust. Oof. Yes, 8-Ball would have been killed by Bill prior to their defeat in Weirdmageddon 3. Bill also uses another random henchmaniac's bones as a coat after failing to give him more suggestions. While this would have been more brutal, it would have preserved the brutal unpredictability we came to expect from Bill that faded for a while after he unleashed Weirdmageddon. One more piece of bad news would have set Bill off when Keyhole runs in, letting Bill know Gideon allowed Dipper to escape into Mabel's bubble. Bill would have erupted into flames, and it would have been a stark contrast to how Bill behaves in the final version of Escape from Reality. Despite the setback, he's still cocky and upbeat. Originally, in the episode's climax, Dipper would have actually murdered Dippy Fresh. Dippy Fresh walks up to Dipper, claiming Dipper's hat is on backwards before actually flipping it backwards, only for Dipper to retort, "Your head is on backwards," and snap Dippy Fresh's neck. Oh my god. In the third part, Weirdmageddon 3 Take Back the Falls, little Gorny, who was previously devoured by the Summerween trickster, would hold on to hope that Ford could undo Bill's weirdness. This would be accompanied by Pacifica and Sheriff Blubbs mourning their own losses. It's a very dark opening to the episode, but it actually would have fit it well and set the tone for the series finale. Cthulhu would have also had a cameo, speaking in complete sentences. He would have been guarding the pyramid when he spots a helpless kid. Before he can eat the kid, the Shakatron throws Greasy's diner at the monster, making a triumphant alternate entrance. An extended version of the credits sees much more festivities for the Pines family and friends. Face painting with Head Shin, Mabel dancing with McGucket, Dipper playing the tuba with an audience of Mabel and Wendy, Mabel painting Robbie's nails, Stan and Ford fighting over a female's affection, and so much more. All of this would have accumulated in the revelation that the credits is actually a scrapbook Mabel's presenting to her class, chronicling how she spent her summer vacation. I'm not crying, you're crying. Now let's talk about some scrapped episodes in the series. There's actually a scrapped episode that was meant to be a parody of the movie Labyrinth. In a writer's panel podcast with JG Quintel, Hearst revealed an episode for the middle of the first season. The episode would have been a parody of the movie Labyrinth. Dipper as the brother who was stolen, and Mabel as the reluctant sister who would rather hang out with the David Bowie Groblin King. It would have begun with Mabel watching a Labyrinth-like movie for the 9th time, and Dipper complaining about it so much, she wishes him away. The B plot would have followed Dipper, who reveals he hates the movie because he's terrified of puppets, and how he overcomes this fear. The episode was scrapped because Disney executives didn't think anyone would understand the reference. But they're so wrong. Another scrapped episode was a B story with a Stan and Wendy heist. In this B plot, Wendy gets grounded by her father for frequently getting into trouble. To blow off steam, Wendy shoplifts from the Mystery Shack but is caught by Stan. Instead of being punished, Wendy is offered an alliance with Stan as he sees a gift within her. There would be a dope training montage of Stan training Wendy to become the best shoplifter she can be. Ready for their biggest heist, Wendy sets their sights on stealing a diamond from the Gravity Falls History Museum. They attempt to steal the diamond but are caught. Stan takes the fall for Wendy, claiming everything was his idea and Wendy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Stan later tells Wendy in jail that he's lived his life, but she still has one and she should live it to the fullest. It would have been great to see more Stan and Wendy bonding. Unfortunately, this would have been only about 9 minutes of screen time, and unable to think about a good A plot to accompany this episode and fill the other 13 minutes, the B plot ended up on the cutting room floor. There was another scrapped episode titled Gum Commercial. In it, Dipper and Mabel compete in a contest for a twin-heavy gum commercial, which takes them to the Twinstitute, where they meet the other twin competitors and realize they're the most boring twins ever. The message would have been about how every twin is unique, likely taking inspiration from Alex Hirsch and his own twin sister Ariel, but the show's crew found the episode a bit too dumb to fully realize. The final scrapped episode we're talking about is Headless Hunter. In it, Stan disconnects Dipper and Mabel from technology after firmly believing it's evil by embarking on a camping trip. During this trip, they're hunted by a headless demon hunter. At one point in this episode, they would have stayed in the cabin of the hunter and turned on the lights in the room only to find the heads of other hunters mounted on the walls. The crew find it to be much creepier than they anticipated and scrap the idea entirely. Wow, that was a lot, but hey, in this case, a lot is just barely enough. Which deleted scene or scrapped episode was your favorite? Which one would you love to see animated one day? In fact, there's a chance we could get something along those lines. This isn't just lying to ourselves like we usually do either. There's reason to believe that we could get more Gravity Falls content in the future, but that's a video for another time. For now, comment below your favorite deleted scenes or tweet your thoughts to us at Roundtable Vids, or for my own thoughts, follow my own Twitter at It'sRetroNemo. We're also on Instagram.
Gravity Falls season is upon us once again with the release of the Book of Bill, a new Gravity Falls book geared towards older readers. This book is loaded with a ton of new information around Bill and the lore of Gravity Falls itself, but it doesn't just shed light on some lingering plot plot threads, it also introduces new ones, directly setting up a brand new Gravity Falls adventure pretty early in the book, where Dipper and Mabel may have to face their greatest enemy yet, themselves. I want to break down this insane tease, running through all the Dipper and Mabel variants in the spread, and speculate on how this may be followed up on in the future. Is this just setting up another book, or could Alex Hirsch be testing the waters for full-on revival? A Gravity Falls sequel? I have some thoughts! And real quick, go buy the Book of Bill, y'all. It's worth it. I'm still making my way through it, but so far it's been worth every penny. I think it's the most unique Gravity Falls book we've had so far, and it feels like the tone of this world has matured alongside the audience while still embodying everything that made Gravity Falls great. I can't recommend it enough. And even though we'll be making videos on some of the lore drops in this book, it is just jam-packed with so much content and personality that you'll still have an amazing time with it, even if you do know a handful of revelations going in. Also, if you end up enjoying this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable with notifications on so you never miss a Gravity Falls video. So the Book of Bill briefly touches on parallel dimensions, and so far, it feels like it was only included to tease this future project. Bill Cipher reveals that he's gifted with the ability to see into other worlds, stating,
"There's a world where every type what you make comes true. A lot of ducks in that dimension. A world where I'm a square. We don't talk about that world.
Gotta love the nod towards the fandom stat, Strange.
A terrifying chibiverse where everyone's arms and legs have been sanded down to nubs. And I can see worlds where the Pines family lost. Look at them. These two plucky little protagonists, happily ever aftering without a care in their oversized heads. They don't consider for a single moment the sheer improbability that they got to exist in the one timeline where they kept all their bodily organs, out of the infinite timelines where they were erased, shattered, drowned, frozen, or dismembered before they can make it to 13. But I guarantee you that their less lucky dimensional duplicates think about them all the time. Maybe one day, all these parallel Pines will get the chance to meet up face to face. Maybe one day in the future, all their good luck will finally run out.
This brings us to a jaw-dropping 2-page spread where Dipper and Mabel are surrounded by an army of parallel Pines. Variants who presumably want to find a way into our Dipper and Mabel's dimension and fight to the death so that the last variant standing can assume the Prime Pines' identities. So let's run down the roster of Dippers and Mabels from these darkest timelines who want to go toe-to-toe with the Mystery Twins. Starting from the far left corner, we have Blind Eye Dipper, from a world where they lost in Society of the Blind Eye and had their minds erased. But since Dipper and Mabel have a knack for uncovering the town's secrets, perhaps Blind Eye even thought it'd be better to flat out brainwash them, convincing them that they were already a part of the society after their minds were wiped. Or maybe instead of opposing the society at all, Dipper folded and joined their ranks, repressing his bad memories instead of learning from them. Next to Blind Eye Dipper is a petrified Dipper and Mabel. In this world, they were caught by Bill's minions and petrified by eye bats, unable to stop Weirdmageddon. In this timeline, Bill won. There's Zombie Mabel. I'm guessing the zombies got to her before she could hit them with Taken Over Midnight. There's Ejected Soul Dipper. He never got his body back from Bill in Sock Opera. And in Journal 3, Bill revealed that he was actually going to jump off the water tower in Dipper's body, making it look like Dipper just went insane and offed himself. So perhaps this is Dipper's soul after witnessing that fate. We have Bill Mabel, or Babel? Mill? This is a variant where I want to see the full story because all we could infer is that Bill made a deal with her at some point instead of Dipper. Maybe this could have been around the events of Sock Opera. Maybe this was around the events of Dipper and Mabel versus the future. We don't really know. Though I do think this happening around Sock Opera would track because Bill could still go to Mabel and say he just wants a puppet, and in exchange he'll put on the best puppet show anyone's ever seen. Either way, dark. We have 8-Bit Dipper, presumably from a world where he lost the fight against Rebel McSkirmish and Fight Fighters, and got transformed into a video game character. Or maybe Giffany trapped him in a game. It could easily be one or the other. We have Smile Dip Mabel, one who apparently never came down from her high. We have Gnome Queen Mabel. I'm guessing the old leaf lore trick didn't work out in this timeline, and the gnomes forced her hand. Which makes me wonder if Dipper's even alive in this world. Still, this is some really cool payoff after 12 years. We have Wood Dipper, a fate that we briefly saw in Northwest Mansion Mystery, but I guess in this timeline, Pacifica didn't open the the gates of the Northwest Mansion, so Archibald Corduroy never passed on, and Dipper remained petrified. Dark. And then next, I think we have a Summerween Dipper and Mabel. Dipper's covered in candy, his clothes are torn, Mabel's hair is trashed. I feel like these could be a reference to another episode, like, they look a little bit familiar, but skimming through the episodes, I couldn't find them. And the Summerween monster's guts is candy, so it just kind of tracks to me. But if this was a reference to something else, please let me know in the comments. But for now, I'm just assuming they got eaten by the Summerween monster. We have Zombie Dipper with a decaying arm. Again, I guess they didn't get to hit that 3-part harmony. We have what's either a wax replica of Dipper melting, or Dipper himself got turned into a wax figure, and he's been tragically struck by sunlight. I'm real curious about what happened here. We have the fan favorite Bipper. This seems to be from a timeline where Bill kept Dipper's body and was getting into all sorts of shenanigans. We have Tiny Dipper and Mabel from the episode Little Dipper. I guess they never returned to the normal size, and they're angry about it. We have a Dipper who actually got stabbed in the back with shears by Gideon, something that almost happened in The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. That's gotta leave a mark. And we have Amulet Mabel, who's also from The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. We can tell because she's wearing an identical sweater and has the same glow effect. If I had to guess, she didn't get to save Dipper as he was falling to his death in this timeline. So she spiraled, keeping the amulet and maybe becoming a feared witch among Gravity Falls. God, I want to see that! And we have Blind Eye Mabel. Same deal as I said with Blind Eye Dipper. They either mind wiped her and said, no, you're part of the society, yes, no, stay. Or she folded and joined them without getting her memory wiped. Which would track, since she was already contemplating memory erasure in the episode. And last but not least, we have Time Displaced Dipper, or a Dipper who's erased from existence, which I imagine is either from the Time Traveler's Pick or Blendon's game, since he has the time travel tape measure. Oh, and Dipper clone number 2. He's not new, so I forgot about him. Now, we can't make out every Dipper and Mabel. There are a ton that are obscured, but these are the most notable ones with distinguished features. And I love pretty much all of these scenarios. Yeah, I'm not going crazy over the Summerween timeline, but I dig that how these variants ended up with these fates is for now left up to the imagination. Not all of them have super obvious origin stories. But with that said, where is all of this even going? Well, this book is setting up another Gravity Falls related announcement for next week. Maybe it's tied to this. If I had to guess though, this setup is either a hook for a sequel to the Lost Legends graphic novel, where the Parallel Pines will be one of 4 new stories, or it could be setting up some sort of revival. Maybe a TV special or movie, as this would definitely be a story that could work as both a reunion and a victory lap for the series, celebrating what's come before while taking these characters to new places. And I think both outcomes are feasible. Gravity Falls is huge and still a moneymaker despite being off the air for over 8 years. The animation industry is interested in popular IP above everything else right now, so it really feels like the stars are aligning. Either way, Hirsch is definitely cooking up something. As for how these variants will get their hands on Dipper and Mabel in the first place, I think the most obvious answer would be Ford. But not our Ford, a different Ford in a timeline where he created a fully functioning portal. Maybe this Ford was broken by Bill's influence and molded a mad scientist persona. And when Dipper and Mabel get shipped out to Oregon for the summer, something very bad happens to them. So Mad Scientist Ford, who has a working portal, tries to scour the multiverse to replace his dead niece and nephew, only to inadvertently assemble the League of Bad End Dippers and Mabels, who take matters into their own hands. But that's just my twisted little pitch. The Book of Bill has sowed a lot of seeds for the future of Gravity Falls, from an invasion of Parallel Pines to the resurrection of Bill's Cipher, but it also does a lot to recontextualize the past. The book further fleshes out our core cast of characters and their origins. It felt like every few minutes I was reading another massive revelation that changes the way I look at Gravity Falls. The most shocking of these truth bombs revolving around Dipper and Mabel's parents, and the heavy implications that they might be getting a divorce. Which is a twist that blows my mind, because not only does it explain so much about why Dipper and Mabel were shipped out to Gravity Falls for the summer, but it sheds new light on Mabel's state of mind when she got tricked by Bill, why she was acting so nonchalant inside the bubble, and why Dipper taking Ford's apprenticeship was such a big deal to both of them. Honestly, this is one piece of information that completely changes the way I look at Dipper and Mabel's arcs. Seriously, everything clicks into place. I've been itching to break this down, so enough beating around the bush, let's dive into it. Like and subscribe! please? So the Book of Bill has a chapter all about dreams. Bill's a dream demon after all. It's sorta his specialty. He explains that he's one of the select few beings who has access to the mindscape, a realm that all consciousness is connected to. Every time we fall asleep, our minds open up a portal to this domain. This is what allowed Bill to understand his mind back in Dreamscaperers, and how he initially introduced himself to Ford back in the day after being summoned. Although we know he can also enter your head if you make a deal with him. Bill gives us a peek into the dreams of our main squad, the characters represented in the Zodiac. Some of these dreams skew more to the comedic side of things, like how Soos wants to change his last name to Pines, which Melody will have a problem with, or how Ford is pansexual, or how Gideon actually loved the sailor suit that Bill put him in during Weirdmageddon. Blubs only dreams about Derlin and vice versa, which is really cute. But then a lot of these dreams are just dark or sad, providing insight into these characters in a way that makes us really feel for them. Wendy almost exclusively dreams about her late mother, implying that her death really had an impact on Wendy, and that she died when Wendy was old enough to remember her. They were probably close, and Wendy just bottles all of that up. God, she has the potential to be one of the most interesting characters in the franchise. More Wendy development is a great argument for more Gravity Falls if you ask me. Pacifica has nightmares about trying to wash blood off her hands, but it never comes out, and she accidentally crushes the town because she's 100 feet tall. Both dreams, I believe, are a reflection of the guilt she associates with being a Northwest, after realizing just how self-centered and cruel her family truly is. Her family legacy was built off screwing over the less fortunate, generational sins that she feels like she can't atone for, hence the blood that can't be washed off. Wanting to be better than her parents, she's becoming conscious of the fact that her name has power and influence, and she wants to use it for the greater good, that power being why she's 100 feet tall. But she's afraid of turning out like any other Northwest, leaving other people to suffer for her own benefit, hence crushing the town. Poor girl has a lot on her mind, and apparently in her dreams, Archibald Corduroy, the lumberjack ghost, still communicates with her. He seemed to gain respect for Pacifica, but maybe he still shows up as a way to hold her accountable, applying pressure for her to do better. Or maybe he's just venting about hell. Stan has nightmares about being in high school and his brother being trapped in a science fair experiment, eluding the Ford science fair project that would have been revolutionary, but Stanley, being reckless and angry, destroyed the experiment by mistake. It makes perfect sense that he's still dreaming about this after like 40 or 50 years, because destroying Ford's experiment was the catalyst to everything changing. The two bros falling out for years, Stan getting kicked out the house, Ford going to backups more and meeting Fiddleford. That science fair project is responsible for this entire series happening, and Stan still regrets messing it up all these years later. Mabel's dreams tend to generally impress Bill, as he boasts that she has some of the greatest dreams in the whole mindscape, but she has reoccurring nightmares where she fails to save a dying pig, Waddles. She's extremely paranoid about Waddles kicking the bucket, because not only did she nearly lose him when they first met in the Time Traveler's Pig, but she has trauma from him getting abducted by a dinosaur in the Land Before Swine. Honestly, I really feel for Mabel, because I'm constantly paranoid about my cat Milkshakes, since I was forced to give up my childhood cat eons ago when I moved for the first time. I wasn't even in middle school back then, and it still affects me now in my 20s. I totally buy that Mabel would be messed up over everything her and Waddles had been through over the summer. But then there's Dipper's dream, the big one.
Recurring nightmares while overhearing a fight between his parents he wasn't supposed to hear. Why do you think they're in such a rush to get the kids out the door for the summer?
God damn. Dipper said while narrating in the first episode that his parents sent him and Mabel out to Gravity Falls for the summer so that they wouldn't be inside brain rotting all day, and instead get some fresh air, make some new friends. But in actuality, it sounds like their parents sent them off for 3 months because they were in the process of separating. They were getting a divorce and needed some time to figure out their arrangements. Who keeps the house? Who has custody of the kids? What are weekends gonna look like? Etc. It was just better the kids were away from home so that they wouldn't be caught in the middle of any tension. They wouldn't have to overhear any more arguments. This one piece of information completely changes my perception of Dipper and Mabel. This truly recontextualizes their arcs from start to finish. Why did Dipper become so obsessed with the mysteries of the town? Why did Mabel become so laser focused on getting a boyfriend? It's not just because they're kids, it's because they're desperately trying to distract themselves from the anxiety of their parents splitting up. The dread of not knowing what their lives are going to look like after they go back home. Knowing that holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas won't ever be the same, yet not knowing how it'll be different. Are they going to have to move to a new house? If so, are they going to have to go to a new school district and basically start their lives over? All of this is a lot for any kid to have to think about, and as a child of divorce, it really ain't easy. So it makes sense that they would both resort to escapism. Dipper trying to unravel a 30-year-long mystery, and Mabel settling for trivial relationships that feel like a big deal when you're young, but don't really matter in the long run. Mabel's coping mechanism is definitely a bit more realistic, but Dipper's can easily be equated to someone just hyperfixating on media in the real world. This is how I look making cartoon theories. But not only does this rationalize a lot of their behavior in an average episode of the series, but it really gives us a whole new perspective on where their heads are at during the end of the series. Dipper was so enticed by Ford's offer to stay in Gravity Falls as his apprentice because that meant he wouldn't have to go back home to a broken family. Not that the Stan Bros were any better at that point, but at least there were cool monsters to fight. Mabel was crushed by the mere idea of Dipper staying behind in Gravity Falls because that would have meant that she had to face the new status quo at home alone. Which, yeah, your twin, your absolute best friend abandoning you during a significant time in both of your lives isn't gonna feel great no matter how you spin it. Mabel was always going to get the short end of the stick in that deal. Speaking of deals, yes, Dipper and Mabel's parents getting a divorce would explain why Mabel was emotionally vulnerable enough to get tricked by Bill, handing over the rift to who she thought was Blendin Blandin. The Book of Bill actually leans into this, as we learn that Cipher tried to make a deal with Mabel before Weirdmageddon. He loved Mabel's style and found her to be a perfect pawn. So what went wrong for him? Well, her mind has wanted posters of Bill everywhere, and her Hall of Secret Fantasies is protected by Xyler and Kraz. Bill infiltrates the facility under the guise of Chill Cipher, but ultimately, Mabel's big secret fantasy was just a CD of Fantasy by Mariah Carey, so Bill demands to learn what makes Mabel sad, a weakness that he can exploit, to which Xyler and Kraz state, "Summer's ending, my guy. Ending to death, bro. She'd do anything to make it last just a day longer. Probably something rash and out of character even." Gotta love Hirsch taking the piss out of any Mabel haters out there. Don't shoot the messenger, but yes, Mabel was desperate enough to find any way to make summer last for as long as possible, because she didn't want to face a world where her parents were divorced. Bill, only working with some of the details, capitalized on this and possessed Blendin Blandin, the one person who could offer her more time. And we all know how that turned out. This also explains why Mabel had an odd ignorance is bliss vibe in Mabelland. Although I think Bill was influencing her with his dark magic, this was all the escapism she could ever hope for. She was in a world where her parents never get divorced, and she didn't want to give it up. She didn't want to see it for what it really was. This really increases the impact of Weirdmageddon 2, Escape from Mabelland's ending in particular, as the two vow to stick together and face the future no matter what happens. Knowing that they're not just talking about Bill or turning 13, but dealing with some really hard changes in their immediate family. Again, it changes their whole arc. I could go on about it all day, but I think I'll pipe down and save it for any character videos I may do in the future, like the Steven Universe ones I started making, which you should check out if you haven't. I think this also explains why Stan was so adamant about Watto's going home with the twins. They're already going through a lot. They don't need another thing to be upset about. And if you're already going through some drastic changes, what does throwing a pig into the mix really do beyond some much needed emotional support? So there you have it, the twist that changes Gravity Falls as we know it. One that adds a lot of relatability to viewers out there. I don't think it was planned during the original series, but it's a very welcomed addition. Now yes, for all we know, Dipper and Mabel's parents could have worked things out while the kids were gone, and I'd love that outcome. But I don't think that really changes the state of limbo Dipper and Mabel were existing in for 3 months while they were far from home. It's the uncertainty of the future that matters more to this story than whatever the future actually ends up being. But as always, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. How do you feel about this development? What else do you think this drastically changes in the show? Let us know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at Thoughts and at Roundtable Vids. Shout out to Janky Bones for another amazing thumbnail. Give them a follow over on Twitter at JankyBone. And if you enjoyed this video, please sort of like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more Gravity Falls content. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.